Okay, well, we're on number 38. Bad ideas, good stories.
Yeah.
All right, so back to that.
Dusty, Pat. And
Rage talk.
yeah, rage talk. No, this is good. So he won. He puts $40 into his VLT thing on his phone and wins like $5,500.
Oh.
So he's just like, fucking A, right on, party all night, idiot. See him the next morning at work, and I'm like, I don't even know how you're here. You know what I mean? Like, you're barely functioning. He's like, I did not sleep, but I'm gonna go home for a bit. Well, phones me later that afternoon. Says his mom phones, and he's from the East Coast originally, and his mom's still looking after his dog. And he says he's got this neighbor who came over, and he's like, I grew up with this guy. He fucking, coached me in hockey and shit like that, and I hung out with his kid all the time. Well, he goes over and starts threatening his mom about the dog. I'm going to shoot the dog. It's barking, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to get the cops on you. Like the usual kind of asshole
Considerate
shit.
stuff. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So he, of course, redlines immediately and then has to phone this guy and fucking threaten him from 7 provinces away.
Yeah.
But
I will fly there.
Yeah, and that's exactly. And then pick a descriptor of how you'd ruin somebody in their front yard. Yeah. It's like you were there. And so then he had to phone me afterwards and just like, I just got a vent. And he's like, and I feel like you got big shoulders, man. You're used to taking this kind of stuff.
Yeah, because I'm not dealing with any of my own shit.
You guys gonna be climbing around on him. You want to shave him while you're at it, please? I'm gonna be carrying all this bullshit weight. Somebody can trim them up. Yeah. So yeah, that's what's been in the air as of lately. Fucking weird vibes, and I don't know if it's becoming a fuller moon. I don't know if I'm fucking with this right now. It's gonna make it sound like shit, but
Click clock.
I'm gonna get it so it's quit moving around.
Yeah. There's been lots of crazy shit. Yeah, it could be the moon. It could be the end times that we're living in. All of that stuff. This is the little mirror of the end times. I've been working a lot on forgiveness. Forgiveness of myself, forgiveness of others, past wrongs, and stuff like that. And that kind of goes hand in hand. Trying to be a better human being on a regular basis, and it's hard, and it's a slow process of refinement. Trying to be a better person than I was, because I get in certain headspaces, usually, PTSD or psychedelics, that drive me into being really beating the shit out of myself, right? Like, you are like the worst human being that's ever lived. You, Hitler, Stalin, all of that.
For sure.
And I really have to work on treating myself kinder. But at the same time, you got to realize that, like, yeah, stuff happened to me, and it caused me to do stuff, and it caused me to be somebody, and now I'm trying to be a different person. So don't beat yourself too bad, because you're better than you were 2 years ago, and that's better than you were 10 years ago, and that's better than you were 20 years ago. So the slow increments of being a better human being are there. You know what I mean? Like, the relationship I have now is different than the relationship I had with my kid's mom, and the relationship I had with her was different than with who I was with before. So all of these are slow little getting better, but and it doesn't all happen at once, and I got to remember that. But man, it gets tough when we're living in some pretty high stress environment times, and it's almost like everything is geared to bring out the worst in people.
You're really pushing the fucking buttons.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, a couple episodes ago, when we actually only recorded 20 minutes because I was just so goddamn doom and gloom, right?
Well, and you know what? And if I probably wasn't as stoned as I was, I might have been able to figure out how to navigate that. But I was just like, holy fuck.
Yeah. Negative
but
spiral.
dude, yeah, it's tough. And I mean, and again, I was just talking about this with my mother about my grandmother moving. I said, like, she's been having a really tough time with a bunch of this, that. And I said, like, none of it on its own is ever a big thing. But if she hadn't had the pile of shit she's had the last 2 years of deaths in the family and all that kind of shit, you could navigate these kind of things better. But I was telling her, I'm like my mom's working on her doctorate right now in criminal justice, and my brother, he fucking ended up in like his dream job somehow, and I'm doing well at what I'm doing. So I'm kind of like, the fact that any of us are even functioning right now is pretty good, and that we're even thriving is like, fuck, that's impressive. So like, go easy on yourself and all the other shit. It seems like it's piling up and falling behind. It's like, well, fuck. In the grand scheme of things, you're always doing a little bit better.
Well,
if you're thinking about it, right? If you're not thinking about it, then it's easy to do that old slip and slide, right?
Yeah.
And I know, and it's tough too. And it's like, because I really felt it fucking last weekend. I got real worked up, and I was just like, I feel like, stop pushing me. Stop pushing me. Everybody stop fucking pushing me. Like, the amount I'm giving you back right now is as much as I can without freaking the fuck out. So just stop right there. And I feel like a lot of people feel like that. I don't know what's different. Kids going back to school and worried about fucking COVID or real. You know what? It's a fuck too, because lots of my customers are farmers, and it's like a drought up here this year. So harvest is shit. Like, nobody's getting anything off their fucking fields, and it's going slow now that they started because it rained and all that other kind of garbage. Everybody's real fucking tense. Like a lot of uncertainty seemed excellent even 4 months ago. Like, if you think about this, like the way they fucking opened up the province in the spring, and people were like, "Fuck yeah, summertime, going great." And then I seen the numbers, and it's like we're at just over like 9 deaths per million. All the other provinces are like 4 and under. You know
Oh,
what
really?
I mean? Like it's not just the numbers per capita. It's like we're getting the deaths there up, and we're doubling everybody else's per capita numbers, per week. So. Yeah, so I think that's the opposite of how it was in the summer. Everybody's like, "Yeah, we're gonna be doing concerts, we're doing football
I was
games."
anticipating a summer of carefree lifestyle and then a winter of lockdown again.
Yeah.
That's what I was anticipating straight up.
No, for sure. I as well, but I think that there was still plenty of people that were like a little bit like the harvest went in early this year. It was a really good spring for everybody. So then it's like, wait a minute, kids are going back to school. COVID numbers are up. We're all kind of freaking out. Harvest kind of sucks. Fuck, I thought everything was going good 4 months ago. Like we're going the right direction, and now it's like, nope, we're back into it, and it's gonna be winter right away.
Yeah, I'm going to walk
Sucks.
more. I think anybody can turn a negative situation into a silver lining if they choose to, and they could also dwell in the woe is me and like doom and gloom if they choose to. And your headspace is largely where you choose to be, right? I learned a hard lesson the other day. There was a misunderstanding with the girl. We kind of had it out, right? And I beat the shit out of myself for the better part of a weekend.
He said himself.
Yes.
He beat the shit out of himself.
I beat the shit out of her.
Had a real problem
for
with
the
my old
better
lady,
part of
then
the
I beat the
weekend.
shit out of myself.
She tried to get away.
Yep.
I wouldn't let her. No,
Yep.
no. But really,
Yeah.
emotionally, I literally beat the shit out of myself for most of the weekend. And then I sat down. I separated myself from that emotion, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a little bit of inventory here on what I said wrong and what I did wrong, and and it was already done. But, I had to keep punishing myself for that thing over and over and over and over again. And I'm like, okay, I'm allowing myself to not be stressed anymore about it. I'm pretty sure we worked it out, and I'm not going to make that mistake again. It's something I noticed, and I'll check it in the future. And that's basically that. I will engage with you differently when I get frustrated. Right.
Sure.
And that being said, that's where it should be left. I shouldn't continually beat myself up for this thing that I did wrong.
Yeah.
And now at the same time, I'm doing math on some people in my past that have fucked me over or done things that could have been cooler. And I'm like,
Could have been cooler. Yeah. I'm picturing stab wounds and ruined credit and shit like that. It could have been cooler.
They could have been cooler. All of those people. Both of those are very accurate. Yeah, they could have been cooler.
All hypotheticals.
Yeah, totally hypothetical situations. But people can only act to the degree that they are enabled to act, that they have the skills to act to. So I can't really blame them. And you know what? If I'm trying to do better, I don't need to expect anybody else to do better. I'm doing my self-work, and that's the only thing that's important, And I can't expect to drag anybody kicking and screaming to a better world. All I can do is try and make that better world for myself and those people that I want to surround myself with.
I try to do like that kind of concept on a small scale when I'm driving, where I'm redlining and like raging out, and I'm just I can see how it's all unfolding around me, and I'm just like, God, no, and it's like, no, give them room. Let them do what they're going to do. See it coming. Like I had this like today, legit. Like I seen the accident coming ahead of me. Where I'm like, no, this semi is definitely going to change on top of this Jeep, and he has no idea. And the Jeep's going to try and suicide past me, and I'm sitting in this lane because I know the semi's tried 3 times to get into it, and he just keeps weaving back in and out. And as soon as he comes around me, comes in, cuts him off onto the side of the road. But I just like backed up because I'm like, well, I can't fix this or stop this, but I know exactly what's going to happen.
So this is where I die.
Yeah, no, that's where they die, and I slow down and go and like get on the phone to the ambulance, because I am not going to be part of that because I seen that shit coming.
Yeah, exactly.
I just slow down and get the fuck out of the way.
Yeah, that's
which is
brutal.
bullshit in general. It's not a bad philosophy. Mm-hmm. If you can see
down,
that
get out
bullshit
of the
coming,
way.
try and get the fuck out of the way.
Well, I think paying attention to the consequences of our actions in advance takes us a very long way.
Sure.
Now, like that's in my opinion, that's my interpretation of the principle of karma. Lots of people, when you talk about Buddhism and stuff like this, they're like karma, or Hinduism, or even Wicca. They're like karma. It'll last forever. It's magic. And I like the more literal, old school interpretation of karma, which is simply consequences of actions. So if you want to pay attention to the consequences of your actions, you will probably act wiser. Because you're thinking, what's this going to happen? What's going to happen in the future if I do this thing? And it might feel good right now and I have short-term gain, but it's going to cause long-term pain. Yeah. Or I might have a little short-term pain, but I'm going to have long-term gain. So paying attention to the consequences of things is a good thing. So slowing down.
Well, what's unfortunate though is just being aware of the consequences a lot of times isn't enough for humans. We have to actually feel the consequences before we go, oh, that's what that is. You know what I mean? Like for the physical thing, that's why kids touch things that are hot before they know how to deal with that, right? They're like, don't burn your hand on that. It's red hot. It's going to be terrible. You'll hate it. Yeah, but
but then you learn the consequence, right?
Right. But that's the unfortunate thing of it, right? Because then you can't teach nobody nothing in advance because they go, well, I believe you. Yeah. Let me try my way though. Let me do my version of that, and then it'll probably have the same consequence that it had for everybody else before them doing it.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, man. Because right now we're at the precipice of ecological collapse, right? Well, really, I think all the evidence. I don't want to go off on
I know
it,
exactly what you mean, though. Like, you look at like forest and water
forests
alone.
are on fire. New York is flooding.
Pick a spot in the world, forests are fuck, and the water is
New York is presently underwater while we record
I didn't even
this.
know about that. I was talking to somebody today, and they're like, the whole fucking East Coast underwater? And I was like, God damn, it sounds right.
Boy, I wonder if we're going to pay attention to the consequences of our actions now.
Yeah, worst storm in recorded history in the U.S. It's like, but there's no change in the climate.
No change in the
Nothing's
climate.
happening.
Yeah, exactly. And we just got to pray harder, take away women's rights.
Are you talking Texas or are you talking
all
Texas?
Of it. All
well, they
of
just did that with the abortion rates in Texas.
Exactly.
They're trying to fuck around with that, and Supreme Court's got all loaded up with right-wing conservative types. That the one of them put herself on there basically to
do that.
To Roe v. Wade.
Yeah.
She's like, I'd like to fucking get rid of that if we can, please.
Well, apparently in Texas, the law they put in, I think it's like 60, or what is it? 16 weeks. Any further than 16 weeks, you can't have access to an abortion legally, and it doesn't matter if it's rape or incest, and
or medical reasons as well, because that's
I'm
a
not sure.
large majority of them. What people, everybody's
Yeah.
like, oh, it's just because they don't want it. It's like, well, no. It turns out the reason a lot of people get abortions is because it's gonna kill the mother. There's a good chance.
Well, who
you
knows,
know?
right? So if you really believe in pro-life, well, you should also be anti-war and pro-abortion if it's going to save somebody's life. But I think it's 16 weeks, and somebody pointed out on Twitter, which I thought was hilarious. That's 2 periods. You've missed 2 periods.
Right.
When usually some women will be like, "Oh, my system's a little out of whack. What's going on?"
You can guess the gender of who wrote that paperwork.
Yeah,
you know what
well,
I mean?
it's
Because they're
a lot
going, well, I mean, it's 2 periods. I don't know how they could possibly miss that.
Yes.
You know,
when my wife has it,
Yeah.
dude,
Yeah.
just like let them make their
classic
own. Make them
old,
make their own.
old.
Their
I'm
own
definitely
bodies.
white men making the rules for everybody. Never going to affect them, but they got to fucking make the rules for it. Makes sense. But yeah, we'll see how that fucking turns out. They're angling for the fucking Handmaid's Tale down there. They got excited about it. A lot of people saw that shit and were like, "Well, how do we do that though?
What a better system
How
for
do
the
I
end
avoid
times.
it?" Yeah,
Better system for the end times, but a religious theocracy. They just want a Christian
Yes.
Sharia law.
That's all
man.
that can work in the end of times. People aren't going to fucking like, well, no, but like the theory of democracy can really look at. There's demons, there's sinkholes. I'm worried about the plague. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
See, and that's
Who do I
just it.
pray to?
So I think that's the big thing. I think maybe our collective unconscious is starting to wake up and realize that we are on the edge of a cliff, and the inertia of our culture. It's a real question whether we can pump the brakes enough to not go right over. And the World Health Organization or the one of these groups, like the big guys, they realize they put out I shouldn't talk shit without having these details.
Nope, that's what this is for.
Yeah.
Less facts, more shit.
Well, they put out a paper, and it was terrifying, apparently, in their assessment of the ecological collapse that we're facing if we don't have radical and
Was that the one
change.
talking like that, like by 2080 or 2085, that like most of the southern United States won't be habitable?
Probably.
Because that was one I'd heard recently too. They were talking about that, and I'm like, yeah, fucking checks out. Sounds about right. This is all shit that like people from the 60s and 70s, 80s were all screaming about, and it just gradually got bigger, bigger. Everybody's like, well, I guess that is what's been going on. Hey, I tried so hard not to look and pay attention.
See,
now it's right in your face. Like again, worst drought Saskatchewan's seen in a long time. Worst fucking storm.
Well,
in
what do we do if
recorded
the
history.
river dries up?
Die.
So, yeah, right. This is basically what we're going to
California without any place to go.
The billionaires, the 10% or whatever, the 1% will be able to have their little compounds and move their compounds wherever the natural
Maybe it's a
resources
train,
are in place.
Snowpiercer.
Well, yeah,
which I
exactly.
just
Whatever the
watched
kids
recently.
recently. Very good show. But
why it is fresh
they'll
in
be
my
able
memory.
to survive because they'll have the resources to survive, and everybody else can die off. Us common people can die
Keep a
off.
few of us as slaves.
If that.
Need the
If
slave
that.
class.
Maybe
you gotta have something
food
to grease
stock.
the machine. Like once again, Snowpiercer.
Soylent Green.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So yeah, I think maybe in collective unconscious, everybody's anxiety and stress is coming from that slow realization that things are really heading towards that edge. And if we don't pump the brakes fast or come up with some radical change immediately, like yesteryear, then we might be fucked.
Yep.
Like beyond fucked.
Mad Max, here we come.
Well, yeah, to say that would be, I think, a gentle version of that world, right? And people
That
like
was
to,
a rough world.
yeah. That's
They were
the thing.
raping everybody.
And and I think the powers that be are really trying to sell us rainbows and kittens and all the wonderful dreams that, just keep watching RuPaul forever and everybody will be happy. Oh, fabulous, right? No, it's not fucking fabulous. But you don't want to be too honest about what's going on, because then people will start realizing how fucked we are. Because
Well, it gets to be a panic where you're like, well, do I disengage now? Do I sell my house now? Because it's like it's new for them, right? And again, like the ruling class, they can't have that. They can't have everybody being like, wait a minute, this whole system's fucked and it doesn't really benefit me, and I'm just
I'm
doing
no
this to
longer
feed them.
paying taxes. I'm
Because-
no longer going to work. I'm
well,
no longer
exactly.
obeying the law.
Then all of a sudden, the Bezoses of the world can't have their fucking space fun times or whatever they're going to do. Their Elysium they're going to build.
Fuck are they doing? Actually, I saw this thing talking about Bezos and the theory about the Elysium, and they're all going to escape to space.
I was absolutely making that up when I
Oh,
just
really?
said
That's
that.
a
And
real
that's
theory that a lot of people
excellent.
are talking
Of course
about.
it is.
And
Why
they're
wouldn't
talking-
it be?
Well, they're talking. Well, think about it. Like you got Musk, you got that guy from Virgin Records, you got Bezos. They're all trying to have their little spaceship jack off fests, but it takes I guess a team of 1,000 people for those little shitty trips to the
Oh, I wouldn't
to the
doubt it.
space,
Yeah.
just to make sure a rip in the thing doesn't suffocate them all or drag all the oxygen out. So that team of 1,000 people just to maintain that. So the idea of them living in some outer space paradise is really unrealistic. But the other side is like these ultra rich billionaires living in gated compounds with their own private security forces is real. That is actually
And
being
on Mars.
planned. Well, not on Mars, you know what I'm saying.
No, absolutely, man. Well, I mean, I don't know when those prepper shows started popping up all over TV, but I mean, that was because there was enough ordinary schmoes doing that shit that everybody was like, is there a bunch of people doing this? Are there a bunch of people making underground compounds? And then I've seen some of them where it was just the luxury ones like that, where they're like, they won't disclose not even the fucking state they're in, let alone the location, because like, no, the whole point of this is for when there's a fucking apocalypse.
I don't
people
want
can't
you to
just come
find
out here
me.
and find
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
right? And these are incredibly wealthy people that are having like, a whole fucking city block underground is like their living area, and then they're stacked 30 deep or whatever the fuck they're doing.
See, and that's just it. Like, I think that there is a movement. There is an underground of people that don't trust the system. They kind of have the forethought and the foresight to see what's coming. And then those people that do take the steps to get away from the systems traditionally have been called terrorists or cult or anti-government or tax evaders and have been shot up by the ATF and the FBI. And it's happened like Waco, obviously. Ruby Ridge would be another one. The Freeman in Montana, just a few hours south of here. All of these were just basically separatists. And they said, hey, we own our land, we ride horses, we farm, we're self-sufficient. And then the government comes up with some reason, whether it's in Koresh, the accusations of child abuse, which were debatable. They found out after they burned them all alive. Or in Ruby Ridge, they shot the guy's wife and dog and I think kid. And then they took him and it was all over an illegally modified shotgun. But because these people are anti-government or they question the narrative and they say, fuck it, I'm moving off grid. In Montana, the Freemen were another group. These guys were just, and they might be right wing, but they just said, fuck it, society isn't working for us. We're going to go live in our own compound. We bought land, we have horses, fuck you. And they said, well, you need to pay us taxes. And they're like, no, we don't. And they had like literally an armed standoff, and then it just went like radio silence. What happened with those guys? I remember following it, and suddenly, poof.
That's interesting, but that's a tough one for me to like get behind either side on that, because I'm like, the people that wanted like that example right there were like, well, we have our own land, we have our own space, and it's like, well, no, but like not under the laws of this land, which is the reason that your ancestors left France or Germany or wherever they were from, because they didn't want to continue to work under, they maybe wanted to do the same thing and couldn't do it there, so they had to go and find their place where they could do that. And I'm not saying that you got to go and fucking find a place to do it. I'm just saying that in my mentality, that's what they kind of think they're doing. But it's like, but no, when I'm staying put and I already have this, and it's like, well, no, that's not what they did. They had to go to the place where they can do that, because those are
At
the
the
rules
same
here.
time, those systems that are put in place, the law of the land, is arbitrary and is controlled by money grubbing corporations.
Oh, totally.
Like
I don't disagree with that. But I'm
what
like,
is it?
that's
The trillions of taxes that went into Afghanistan, it didn't get lost. It got given to firearms manufacturers and weapons manufacturers, who in turn take that money and put it into government to vote in more warmongers.
Yeah,
So if somebody says, fuck that system, I'm not paying you taxes to go to war against people I have no problem with. I just want to live my life alone.
Yeah.
Oh, you're a terrorist. You were coming to take your fucking, kids away or whatever. And they're like, no, you're not. Now you're an anti-government radical. And we've got all the propaganda in the world to say why you were the bad guy that deserved to get shot up. I don't know. We're living in strange times. And I think if more people start paying attention to that, what's actually happening underneath the approved narrative, they start seeing little hiccups. Where it's like, wait a second, that doesn't make sense, and wait a second, that doesn't make sense. But if you do anything, you're obviously a bad guy. You're obviously what's that guy? Kaczynski, Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, right? Like that's only a radical would say society's fucked, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm that guy, but I still pay taxes.
yeah. But you don't mail bomb people though.
No. Not
Right?
that, no. I do not
You know
do
what
that.
I mean? That's a bit of a difference.
I have a daughter. That's what I have. She's gonna be the radical when she grows up. Yeah.
Yeah, lots of radicals radicaling around radically.
Well, and that's just it.
Tubular.
And then, so I've got a few books that I'm working through. I just got to the fourth one here. I got it in the mail just recently. Rape of the Mind by Joost Meerloo. And it's really, really good. So basically, I saw this video online, and it's on YouTube. Anybody can find it. It's called Mass Psychosis, How an Entire Population Becomes Mentally Ill. And it's by these after-school guys. They draw on whiteboards. It's like kind of like cartoons while they tell you a story, but it's like a 20-minute one, and it's fucking crazy. And they quote the hell out of Rape of the Mind. And it's basically the psychology of thought control, menticide, and brainwashing. The programming and the murder of independent thought in our culture by totalitarians and dictators across the board. And he talks a lot like the Edward Bernays propaganda book, the Stanley Milgram's Experiments, Obedience to Authority, and Eric Hoffer's True Believer. He talks a lot about how those people that are easily swayed or just preoccupied with media, social media, with their algorithm that's being fed to them via Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, just television, Netflix or whatever, are very easily swayed. Their opinions can be swayed, their addictions can be manipulated, and they can be guided to believe whatever narrative those people that are controlling those medias want them to believe. And it's pretty scary. It's really scary.
Well, and I feel like that's been like an evolving thing, like since there's been societies. You know what I mean? Like this is the modern version of what we're seeing here now. But I mean, they've been royal propaganda when there was knights and ladies, right?
Okay.
And then as that we got industrialized, I mean, I think it's been more of a concerted effort, though, especially in North America, to really control that. And even it wouldn't even have to necessarily have been for the point of some sort of negative manipulation of the populace just to keep them dumb or something. It could have just been for greed, for advertising, right? Like if we program people like this from a young age with these things, they're going to buy these products, and that's what keeps feeding our thing. So I mean, that's not an inherently negative thing, I guess. It's not like keeping
I think it's
someone a
manipulative,
slave. Well,
and therefore evil.
Evil, fair enough. Okay, but no, absolutely, and I think that's the plan. That's the whole point. That's yeah.
So, okay, you could think about it like altered states of consciousness as discovered by shamans way back, when we were just coming out of the jungles and hitting the plains, and these people, oh, what's this plant if I smoke it? Or what's this mushroom if I eat it? Wow, altered states of consciousness. And they learn breathing techniques can do this, but also we can influence you through this and through that. Well, if they can get people to start obeying certain structures, whether it's religion or whatever, well, then we can kind of guide the direction of a people, right? And then those same principles get turned from religion into psychology. Guys like Jung or Freud start talking about it, and Freud's nephew, Edward Bernays, wrote the book on propaganda, how we can take mass psychology and use this to sell people, but you can also sell them ideas, and you can change mass psychology through narratives. Now, that's just common sense. Everybody knows how advertising works. Like, Sex
Well,
won't.
now-
Sex won't get you toothpaste.
Even 50
Or
years ago, though,
toothpaste won't get
it
you
was
sex.
lost on people. Most people were, because even just picture like North America 50 years ago was most of the population even high school graduates. You know what I mean? Like how literate was everybody? They were still being, people believed that cigarettes were healthy 50 years
Yes.
ago. You know what I mean?
I don't know what that means.
I forgot. Sorry.
Oh. You got to pause or?
It was a very sexual movement.
Yeah,
you're
there's one
making with
plugged
your
in
hands
on
there.
the computer. Well, okay, so
Making
the
hand
Make
motions
America
at me.
Great Again. Cigarettes are healthy. These ones taste great. These
Yeah.
ones will get you sex. These
Yeah.
will do. And now all of that was due to guys like Edward Bernays in the public relations. And so that mode got shifted to politics. It got shifted to, and what I'm seeing now is that same principle of attacking your basic root safety and security and survival needs, but with ethics and morals. And if you don't believe what we believe, you're an enemy. You know, it's almost like McCarthyism. If you question a narrative, if you question anything, well, you're obviously part of that evil people that we don't support. And the worst part that I see on social media, and in fact, the Social Dilemma on Netflix talks about this, that documentary, that your algorithm, if you believe in something and you like something, then it's going to feed you more of what you like. And if you associate with people, this is something my girlfriend was just telling me. We were at Electric Sky, the rave, right? And if you're going in an environment, and let's say these algorithms and Google advertising, whatever they're called, they will look at the bubble that you're in and see which bubble, what the common searches are, what the most popular searches are in that bubble, and suddenly your advertising on your social media will reflect the bubble. So there was these guys all over the rave that we were at riding these one circle kind of off-grid,
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking
yeah,
about. Yeah. One wheel.
skateboard kind of things,
Yep.
one wheels. I never said anything. I didn't Google anything. Suddenly I get back to Saskatoon. That shit's in my feed. Advertisements for that. And I'm like, look at this. What the hell's going on? And she's like, well, yeah, that's, she saw it in another documentary that when you go to a space, let's say you go to a punk show and a whole bunch of people have been looking up XYZ product. Well, the advertisers, the algorithms will advertise that same product to you because you might have common interests.
Yeah.
Now, that's the same thing with your ethics.
Yeah.
So if you're hanging out in a conservative church, you're going to get advertisers. You're going to get Ben Shapiro offered to you in your feed. You're going to get Jordan Peterson offered to you in your feed. You're going to get other right-wing
Candace
pundits.
Owens, yeah.
Yeah, whoever they are. And maybe, you know, like the Joe Rogan kind of thing, or but at the same time, if you're hanging out in, like, let's say a punk rock show, and all of a sudden you're getting like more leftist, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's
Nothing but Bernie memes.
Yeah.
Well, you know what's interesting? Okay, so I think there's like kind of two ways of looking at that, where like it can definitely be seen as a negative thing, where it's like it's to manipulate you. But if you think of it as like the same concept as like The Secret, where like you just manifest the things you want in your life, and by being in contact with people of similar interest and talking about things that you all have in common, these products, you're the market for them, right? So you can argue that they're being targeted at you, or that they were created in the first place for someone who's probably very much like you, and this is the way that you get to find out about it. It's kind of, to me, it was kind of like seeing, you know, punk rock CDs in like Walmart and shit like that. You know, it's like, is it selling out, or is it accessible for everybody? You know, is it control and manipulation, or is it you mainlining and streamlining the things in your feed without even having to do it because the algorithm's doing it for you? And while you may not be actively choosing them, there's still stuff of your interest where you could be, you know what I mean? Because as soon as you're putting the physical searches in, well, then that's what's popping up too.
Well, I see the potential for a modification of value systems happening.
Oh,
You know?
when it's intentionally, when people start targeting those algorithms to be, okay, the people that are looking at these things, here, I want to feed them these things, right? That's a different thing, right? That's not even just the system, how it operates. That's somebody like trying to fuck with it with the purpose of that, with the...
And I wonder about behind the scenes, whether it's just the computers doing it, just technology, or if there are individuals that are playing games.
Yeah.
Like who's running Silicon Valley? The Zuckerbergs and whoever runs Twitter and whoever is behind all they have to do is a little tweak here and a tweak there, and it's just numbers on a screen, and they can say, you're all getting advertised this person. You have this common interest. Check out this guy's lecture. Check out this guy's lecture. And the critical thinking and the independent thinking is starting to go out the back door and being replaced by what is being fed to you.
Yeah.
And if you don't go along with what is being fed, you're obviously the enemy. You know, how can you be such an atavistic throwback to disagree with somebody's pronoun? Well, I don't know. I don't believe it. There, that's why.
Yeah.
Oh shit, you fucking hate monger. Well, how is that a hate monger? Can we not have dialogue anymore? No, dialogue's yesteryear. It's follow the party line or you're an enemy. And so this is the same thing, you know, the climate change and stuff like that. There's real changes.
Well, it is funny, like how any one of those things can just like, depending on what someone's stance is on it, all of a sudden it's like you can just create that person. You know what I mean? Like how you feel about climate change may dictate how you feel about trans rates, may dictate, you know, because they're all, maybe it's all of the same thing, but it's not, that could be us just fucking with ourselves too. Me thinking like that, being like, well, if they like this, then they're like, because people are more complicated than that. There are like,
there is nuance.
There's nuance in everybody. You know what I mean?
I agree 100%.
And I think it's, again, we see a lot of the loud extremes of everything because that's what
I float in the underworld.
Up. It's yeah,
I do.
so that's what we see, right?
Hell, I'm doing a kink garage sale this weekend to sell off a whole bunch of
Let's talk about that kink garage sale.
Oh Lord!
So what is that? Is that just you, or you got like a whole community?
Oh no, it's just me.
It's a community. Not a community-wide's worth of.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's just me.
Well, you know, my partner and I, we ran a kink education space for a long time, and a lot of it we did have retail stuff for sale, and every once in a while we'd be going and picking stuff up, and hey, this isn't our thing, so we put it in a box. Well, it got to the point where our relationship has morphed into a totally different expression of intimacy. You know, we're still kinky, we still play, but it's definitely not the raw, you know, like there's different cultures within the kink community, and one of them is leather culture. It's very bikery, you know, like when you think about Police Academy, the Blue Oyster Bar, all those like leather guys. Yeah, that's old school leather, right?
What's his name? Rob Halford.
Oh, yes, that's leather. Hell bent for leather, denim and leather. So that's one style of kink, and it's usually a little more rammy and a little more hardcore. And then there's the Japanese kind of aesthetic, which is like shibari and kimbaku, which is a lot like what I do, which is a little bit more like an artistic bondage. It takes time. It develops intimacy. There's some challenge in it. You know, well, you have to have a skill set, and you know, when you lift somebody up off the ground, you need to know your shit. Otherwise, you might accidentally injure them. So we do that. And I've moved away, obviously, because I'm also vegan. I've had the ethical conundrum of having all this leather gear from back in the day. And so some of that's going to go out the window and or go out the door if anybody's interested in it. So yeah, we're selling off some of the old furniture. Like with this that we're working on is a bondage bed, but I also got 3 or 4 more items when I bought this. So those ones we don't really use anymore.
You always want to buy your bondage gear in bulk. Everybody knows that.
Well, people break up and they sell out their entire basement. You know, like a couple that has common investments in their equipment, when they separate, they're like, fuck it, we're selling the entire basement. And that's how I ended up. I ended up buying a full dungeon out of a guy's basement. Yeah. And that's...
I bought a full dungeon.
Oh, yeah. We had stocks. We had a cross. We had a spanking horse. But that's just it. It ends up being glorified clothes hangers.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? After you don't,
if you're not really super into like stocks, for example.
But when we would host parties for like 15, 20 people, you know, and everybody's coming down and
you get some miles on it then.
Oh, 100%. And that's just it. And I've sold a couple items. But for the weekend, I'm going down and hanging out and for the community's sake and seeing who wants what. And, you know, It's a walk on the wild side, you know? Yeah, definitely.
I like that you like perked up significantly. Like, no, let me tell you, I gotta get my hat back a little bit.
Yeah, I'll tell you all.
You guys want to know what I want to know about?
We got a gag that goes into a funnel, which is kind of cool. It goes right in the mouth. I don't know what you put in there.
Excuse me.
You know, stuff.
Jesus.
Yeah, beer.
Hopes and dreams.
That's your shotgun.
Yeah.
Shotgun.
You guys like to party?
Face gag. Put this on.
Yeah. Face gag.
Your boys ever shotgun a beer?
Yeah.
Try this.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I like that. It's a good vibe.
Mm-hmm. But yeah. Well, and that's just it. Okay, so I'm looking around and, you know, I've got this feeling. I see a lot of fucked up elements about society. The hyper superficial element, you know, deadbeat dads, people with like 6 kids or 4 baby mamas, you know, all just like some fucked up shit, like hip hop, but then also in black metal, like the pure misanthropic, like fuck the world, set it on fire, burn churches, burn people, murder, rape, all of that stuff. And I'm sitting there as like growing a little more conservative in my heart, saying, what the fuck's wrong with society? You know, we've lost touch with like our spirituality. We've lost touch with traditions. We've lost touch with our connection with the ecosystem. How degenerate does society need to get before we wake up and realize how fucked it is? And then I look in the mirror Okay, and and I'm covered.
I'm like, I hope they don't instigate these rules tomorrow. I'm fucked.
I'm covered neck to ankle in tattoos.
Yeah.
I've got a BDSM dungeon. I'm a punk rocker who doesn't believe in society or believe in government structures. I am a symptom of the end times. I wanted to make a shirt. I am a symptom of the end times. I go to the gym and I bring down the property value so hardcore because there's, nice Christian kids or nice Christian people, and there's like nice Muslim people, and they're all just working out, some Sikh guys. And then there's me listening to Behemoth and Impaled Nazarene with like my upside down crosses on my shirt. And I'm like, I am the degeneration of society, but I recognize it, I guess,
Somebody's got to be that vibrational frequency.
Yeah.
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 So keep the balance. In
Well,
the
and that's
universe,
just it.
Pat. That's that karma. You're the karmic balance to the rest of
No,
that shit.
please don't say that. After some of my fucking PTSD triggers, please don't say I represent
Seriously,
anything
don't
other
do
than
that.
my own
Cut
delusions.
the camera. Don't say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fucking getting back what you put out. I've always felt like that too, and I feel like it's almost like an energy thing too. Like it's like it could be scientific. The amount of effort and time you put into hating the fuck out of somebody or whatever, you get that back in some other energy in a different way that's probably equally negative.
I sure the fuck hope not. Because it's
Maybe you've
funny.
gotten most of it by now, though.
I wish.
Maybe the dues are being paid, right?
Please,
just being aware. That's a good first step.
Well, that's what I was saying. Like trying to be
Not
a
even
little bit
first
of
step.
a.
You're fucking many steps in.
Well, trying to be a little bit of a better person. The other day, I was so proud. I'm driving down the street, and I saw something plow into the car in front of me. And I'm like, was that a brown paper bag or what? And I kind of try to pull over, and it looks like it's flapping in the wind, this brown paper bag. No, it's a bird. I saw fly directly into the side of a truck that was in front of me. And I'm like, holy shit. So I pull over and I run out, and his neck's all fucked up and his wings just giving her on one side. I'm like, oh no.
So I look like that when I got here. It's
Yeah,
cool.
I'm good. Walking off. So I pick him up and I kind of tuck him against my chest, and I drive around the corner to my house, and I take him out and I'm holding him, and I put him down, and all of a sudden he kind of jumps out of my hand. And he kind of looks at me, and he's scared shitless. Literally, he shit on me. But he's just sitting there, and I'm like, "Are you okay, buddy? You're all right." And all right. So I take a couple pictures just for posterity's sake, and I go inside, and I come out, and he's still kind of like walking around. I come out a few minutes later, and he's jumped up into the tree, and he flew away, and that was my good deed for the day. And
Save that bird from getting squashed.
well, that's the thing. If I would have left him in the street, guaranteed he would have get plowed because it's a busy street. And
Other birds have been teasing him, probably.
yeah, that's why he did it. This was a
Yeah.
cry for help.
Yeah. God damn, I feel like we have so much in common. Yeah.
But like, there's this story my girlfriend.
You know what's
showed
going to
me.
be funny? Is next time we talk and you're like, so I got mites.
I got worms.
How'd you get mites, Pat?
Being a good guy. Well, my girlfriend, or maybe it was her or somebody else. There was this story, and it's about this little boy, and he's on this beach, and he's throwing starfish back into the ocean, like they all washed up, right? And he's picking up this starfish, and he's carrying it to the ocean. He's throwing it in, and he goes back, and he picks it up, another one up, and he throws it back in because they're all washing up. They're going to die in the sun. And this older guy comes up. He's like, "Don't you see? There's like hundreds of starfish up and down this shore. You think you're going to save them all?" And he's like, "No, I'm not going to save them all, but it mattered to that one, right? Yeah, I saved that one, and that made a difference."
Right.
So that's kind of how I look at
Keep
it.
your starfish damp.
Yeah,
So
keep your starfish damp.
No, that's it, right? Help what you can where you
Well-lubed
can.
starfish.
That's a good philosophy because you can't. I think that's why people get overwhelmed with the idea of trying to even be a better person or part of shit. It's like, where the fuck do I start and when do I stop? Because it seems like it's a never-ending thing.
You'll
that I
never
always have
save
to
the
do.
world.
Yeah, exactly. Just do what you fucking can. Do what
Maybe
you
you can save yourself.
Hey, there's a lot of fucking shitty people out there that maybe that's the minimum they need to do. Just save yourself from being a dickhead on a daily basis, and that's good. That's cool. Once that's coming easy, I guess you can worry about something else. But if you can't do any more than that, then maybe that should be just the focus is you and your dickheadedness.
I think so. I watched this
Or
video.
me and my dickheadedness is what I should be saying.
I watched a video, and it was a Jordan Peterson kind of back and forth, and he's in Australia, and this woman comes up, and she's like, "So, do you have anything for the millennials or the young people out there that are faced with issues like racism or gender inequality or pay wage stuff or the climate crisis other than clean your room?" and or other than banal information like clean your room up. And it's interesting because he had a good point, in my opinion. He's like, well, as a psychologist, I think that there's no shortage of good that can come from individuals taking responsibility for their own self-improvement. Like, if you improve your life, that makes your life better, and it might improve the group, the life of those people around you, and they might make their lives better.
Well, it's like somebody's not seeing the end result of what the concept of clean your room means.
I think
because
so.
once you've got a clean room and it's mighty tidy and you don't have to put as much effort into it, you can clean your house.
Yes.
And you can clean your yard. And then you can clean the neighborhood. And then maybe you can clean your city. And then so on and so on and so forth.
And that's just it. And he had a very good point, although it was a little bit of a jab at the progressive left. And he, imagine.
He can't exhale without doing that, though. To be fair.
And I do love him for it,
to
you
Mr.
know.
Peterson.
But he had a good point where he's like, I see an awful lot of people with internal unresolved issues that are skipping that hard work and going straight into these great, big, grandiose moral moral causes.
Yep.
And if you can't even keep your own house in order, how are you going to keep your run a country or change the world if you can't even, get up on time and make your bed?
Well, and that's why a lot of those causes and people do shoot themselves in the foot, because if somebody does want to get involved with it, they go, yeah, this is a good cause, I'm going to get in with it. And you find out who the most vocal, the ringleader is, and then you're like, you're a hoarder also, though? How is that possible? You seem like you should have it together. Maybe you don't know your life. This is the thing that you're focusing on instead of dealing with your shit. And okay, never mind.
Yeah. And I've met a lot of
surprising amount of that. And anybody who's really driven a lot of fucking times, that's it. Because they're like, well, no, I'm not going to fucking work on myself. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to work 70,
I'm going to try and
hours a
improve
week.
my lot for my family, for myself, for my partner, my children, and try and establish that, as opposed to that same drive being for my community. And it's weird because you see that self-resilient, self-work, self-improvement vibe is usually the right-wing leaning people. And that collective, we're all okay without any extra work, is a left-leaning people. But I think there needs to be an amalgamation of the two, because obviously that we're all okay and there's no change that needs to happen has created the world we're living in. And all of that, hey, we got to work hard for our own lot in life, has also created the world we're living in. We need the left to have that get up and do our shit and take care of our business attitude. And we need the right to recognize that the world needs work.
Can you imagine if they were both just on the same projects?
Yeah.
Hey, like the driven, motivated people that wanted to build something were doing it with the community in mind as well, because they were there working together.
But I find,
that's the next step.
well, ideally, right?
Or
Wouldn't
more
that be
balance
wonderful?
amongst ourselves, right? So we can do that kind of shit in a way that's balanced.
But the people that are on the left that say, oh, here we have all these lofty, noble ideas, don't like to do the work. They don't like to pick up the heavy weights. They don't like to have calluses or to sweat. They're the
What's interesting though
intellectuals.
is like that's true, but I mean, you think of any commune,
Well, that's a different. How common is that though?
No, but like I mean, that's an example
That
of them,
would be 100%.
of them doing the work, right?
Yes,
of
if
them,
that happened. I think that doesn't
that's
happen that often though.
because I mean that's a different thing. You have to be kind of removed from regular society for a commune for you to see, because it is physical work they're doing, right?
100%.
So whereas if you're of a group that's of the same mentality in a more urban center, you're probably going to do more philosophical work. You're going to get together and talk about causes and ideas and shit like that, but you're not picking fucking potatoes and putting up a fence and looking after the goats
If
at the
you're
same
a
time.
university
So you don't know the balance
educated
of that, right?
bourgeoisie
exactly.
intellectual,
That's what I'm saying.
You
Yep.
got all of the ideas and you don't want to do the work. Somebody else needs to do the ugly stuff. It's funny. Ness
Or maybe
Creek-
it's just not part of their life too, right? Because I mean, I think it's when given the opportunity, people are capable of all sorts of shit, right? It's just I think if you live in that world where you don't have to do it, right, then why would they ever develop it?
See, that's just it. I think we've had the conversation before, and I'm not sure. You say if given the opportunity, and I'm not sure if I agree so much. I think if given no choice but.
Well, that's what I mean. The opportunity is sometimes.
Yeah, the
You know what I
opportunity
mean?
is you
'Cause
have to
maybe I'm painting it in a rosier picture that I am, but I'm like, yeah, like given the opportunity to have to change a tire in the snowstorm. You know what I mean? That's what
This is your opportunity or die.
right? But like many of them would even have that if all you ever do is Uber and take the bus, right? You would never even have. So you've never been given the opportunity to even show that you have the fortitude to pull through on something like that, because you live in an imaginary world where most everything's kind of done for you.
Yes.
And you do need people like that to think for the people people that can't because they're so busy grinding every day to try and have the lofty ideals and shit. But
See,
there
it's
needs to be more of a work, integration, you know?
See, you can see that real hardworking ethic, but also with the progressive values when you go up to Ness Creek, because there is a community of people that live up there, you know, and those people, they're interesting. They obviously kind of hippie vibe, you know what I mean? They like to party, they like to smoke, they probably drop and do all their stuff. But man, when shit needs to get done, they're building that fence. They're cleaning out that latrine, and they're willing to call you on your shit if you fuck around, and and they'll also punch you in the face if you really get out of line. But that's not this bougie intellectual left. That's a real hardworking left.
I picture a tree planter.
Yes, that's exactly who. Well, half these guys are tree
planters. Those people
planters.
work like fucking animals all the time,
and they live for months in tents, and they're like, yeah, man, that's exactly who these people.
So they
are.
exist, right? It's just, again, they need to meet each other. They need to have more of them hippie get-togethers where they can all like, hey, what does these city hippies do that the country hippies ain't doing?
In my heart of hearts, I guess that tree planter, real hardworking commune would be that meeting of each other.
Yeah,
these guys understand that, like, okay, we have stuff we need to do in order for us to survive. We're also taking care of the environment. We're trying to lower our footprint. Fuck around, you're going to get smacked. You start trying to set fires out here in a fire ban, we're going to let you know why you shouldn't. That's it's almost like what I would consider a hard left.
Yeah.
But in a real way.
Well, what else would we have in Saskatchewan?
Well, no. Right? What we have is these fucking bougie intellectual, like elitist ivory tower fucks coming down from the universities with excuse me, your words offended me, and you should probably check your privilege. Yeah. Fuck, bitch. You just went $50,000 in debt so you could work in a social justice job. Like, what the fuck? Social justice. What are you doing? So basically, that woman that said, hey, Jordan Peterson, you know, what are you going to tell all these people? You say to clean your room, and what are you going to do about social justice? I would love to ask her, what are you doing about social justice? What in your life are you doing to end poverty in your neighborhood, or to fight climate change in your house or in your lifestyle? Because if all you're doing is waving a banner at a parade of something or another, fucking whoever you want, and that's the extent of your activism.
I think it's disingenuous too to go and ask someone who clearly, like, she probably has no value of his opinion if she's going to ask him that at this whatever
it's just confrontation.
Right? Exactly. So why even bother? You really want Jordan Peterson telling you what you should be doing to help with climate change and to change things? You don't value his opinion to begin with.
She thought she stumped him.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Gotcha. Yeah. And you see that on both sides all the time. That same bullshit. Because I'm like, you know, it was like people holding like MMA fighters accountable for the things they say. You know?
Oh, come on.
Well, he's got a view on this, and it's like, they get punched in the head for a fucking living, of course.
The Gracies, when they say something homophobic, the Gracies said a homophobic.
I had a very dark laugh the other day because I was we were just talking about shit on Facebook popping up like anti-COVID or whatever, anti-mask shit, and I was scrolling through and it popped up and I was like, geez, I wonder who posted this, and I scrolled back and I burst out laughing because I'm like, in my head, I'm always like, the people that post this kind of stuff have like some sort of brain damage or they never graduated high school, right? And then I'll scroll back and I'd see it. I'm like, no, I'm right. She didn't have graduated high school. Or this one legitimately had part of her brain removed once for like a tumor, you know? So I'm like, it makes sense that you think that. You're missing a chunk of your brain, you know? And just
you are legitimately handicapped.
It just really made me laugh because I'm like, no, that okay, clear enough. Yep, absolutely. You should totally continue to believe that. I'm not going to bother fucking with you in any way because I'm like, I know that's where you're at.
Well, you know, I guess it's an honest disclosure. Like, I have PTSD. I am handicapped. I have a brain injury. So don't take anything I say as being too serious. I'd like to think I'm pretty well educated for a street guy, but I don't have a degree. I haven't been indoctrinated by those systems. I've got my own beliefs, and they may run countercurrent with some of the popular beliefs, I guess. I don't know. It's funny, this guy, the Mirlu, the juiced Mirlu. No, it wasn't him. It was the guy who became president of Czechoslovakia, survived the oppressive regime of the USSR when they tried to eliminate all dissent and eliminate any political rivals or questioning of the totalitarian governments, right? And he had a really good point where he's like, if these systems don't work for you, what we found in the USSR and what we started to do in Ukraine was develop what we call parallel societies. They're not illegal. It's just a group of people that believe in similar things that you do, or that develop a community of people that live according to the ideals that you share. And they don't need to be the same ideals as the dominant society. And that is the most effective way to combat the totalitarian dictator
put energy into
mind.
it.
As much as you can, disengage
Yeah.
and establish and put your money and time and energy into establishing parallel
That's what
societies.
fucking Jordan Peters should have told them was,
Yes.
you know, disengage in the ways you can from the things that are negative. If you can't fix them and you can't contribute it positively, just try not to contribute at all then to them. Because that's how
Yes.
I feel about lots of shit.
We used to call them
And,
boycotts.
Yeah, right. And again, and it doesn't have to be stamp your feet and scream and have a sign waving. You can just do it. You can just go, no, me personally, I'm not going to do that.
Yep.
And you can talk to your friends about it if you like, I guess, but you don't have to become an activist about it. No one needs you to.
Well,
you can just do you.
I think that is activism.
Right. I guess. Sorry, in the way that it's become, where it's a very vocal, in your face,
You're arguing with
aggressive
people.
type of and again, I feel like I was like that for fucking years
I
on
still
all sorts
am.
of things.
I still am.
Get me on the right topic, absolutely. But I'm going to try to be conscious of it when I'm doing that, and try to be like, well, look, this is what I think or what I've seen happen. This isn't me trying to fucking
We could talk
just
about
get
it
wiling
as being,
out. You know.
well, positive activism is supporting the things you believe in, while negative
Yes.
activism is protesting the things you
you
dislike.
go. There you go.
So what alternatives, like, I guess there's always a place, like there's merit in saying, I disagree with this, but there's more merit in saying, I propose this as an alternative.
Well, and here's the thing: you can propose an alternative without ever presenting the disagreement. You can't really present the disagreement without then proposing an alternative. You can't just go, I don't like this.
This is what I see.
I fucking rights, man.
This is what
That's
I'm
why I did
seeing
it in
the
that
most.
voice with those arm gestures.
The
'Cause
Karen.
I've seen
The
that in the
Karen.
feet stomp and the why doesn't anybody care that I don't like that? Again, I had this interaction with my grandmother's landlord. She didn't like the tone I was using with her over the phone. And
Call
I was
the
like,
tone, please.
And I was like, that's really cool. I couldn't care less about what you think about my tone at all. That makes no difference to me whatsoever. Nothing's going to change. This is going to stay exactly the same. But I don't like this. Okay, then.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
give a fuck. You're not getting any energy out of me putting it into a change for that. So yeah, I couldn't agree more with that, Matt. If that's how you want to change the fucking world, and that's the easiest for anybody. You don't got to read a book. You don't got to do nothing. Do nothing.
Yes, do nothing.
Disengage.
Or just go do the things you want to do instead
then put that energy and time into shit you give a shit about. Yes.
See, okay,
That's the rest of that discussion also.
right.
Do nothing and then
there's lots of things I think are kind of toxic in our society, and I'm not going to sit there and berate people that are involved in them. I'm going to try to establish alternative communities that support the values that I agree with, and support those other communities that maybe I don't belong to that also share those value systems. You know, I'm not going to say I'm going to go be a Muslim because they don't drink, but definitely I see the merit in that, you know, and hey, more power to you, you know. Sam Harris, he likes to say that Islam is the mother lode of bad ideas when it comes to religion. And the more I listen to Sam Harris talk about that, I kind of agree. He's the author. Well, hold on, we can get to that. But he's the author of Waking Up Spirituality Without Religion. But I meet people that are more or less piously religious. And it's weird because we share a lot of values, but I don't necessarily believe in the religion aspect. I think it's a wiser decision for me to not drink alcohol and to not be doing a lot of drugs and to try and keep my quote unquote demons in check. That just seems to be logical to me. And with the more and safer for everybody. And
I was just going to say it's a survival instinct.
Yeah, for me
it's not
and
just
other
what
people.
makes sense. It keeps me alive.
And out of jail and all of these things. But when I meet people and they're like, you're like a Christian, huh? Like, no. No,
Yeah.
but you
So
don't
I'm-
drink and you
I'm
believe
like a Christian in the way that we have similar core beliefs, but I just
Values.
don't follow the stories.
Exactly.
I don't agree on how we all got here the same way.
No, I don't believe in an invisible sky daddy, a punishing sky daddy, leather daddy.
Yeah.
Spanky, man.
Yeah.
So, but that being said,
If there was more, well, no, I guess I shouldn't say if there was more of that. If there was age appropriate more of that going on in churches,
leather
I'd
sky
be
daddy
there.
stuff. Yeah.
Keep it age appropriate though.
But that being said, I share values with a lot of more people that are in rooted spiritual traditions, and it doesn't even matter the tradition generally, I don't know about Islam so much, but when you think about it, somebody who's in touch with indigenous spirituality, or somebody who's in touch with the Viking or Druidic or Euro spirituality or pagan spirituality, or even I've I took an animist course from a guy who was a member of an African like shamanic community. So all of these people had very common value systems, and I'm like, well, I guess I found my tribe more or less, like an extended tribe, but it was rooted in more earth-based spirituality. And but then I go out to the rave and to the clubs or any of this other stuff, and I see this like super loaded, drunk, superficial, hyper materialist kind of stuff going on, and all the games that are going on. I'm like, this is no longer my community. So I'm not going to shit on it. I'm just not going to go there as much. You know, I'm going to choose those more,
It's for who it's for.
yeah, there's a time and place,
that
I
is
guess.
not you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's an evolution, right?
So that's cool, and I like that because I feel like also like with all those different groups you were talking about, it's like I don't know of any of them that also have a doctrine of, and then when you run into a different group, make sure you tell them that it's bullshit and that ours is the only one.
Islam.
You know, fair. So they do that, okay.
Okay.
But I think I just
Well-
Christianity was kind of like that was their whole jive. Is like we're going to take it to everybody and make sure that they know this is the word. Whereas with something that's more shamanistic, I thought it was just like,
Yes.
no, if you follow this is what we do. You follow that thing. Okay, I don't know about that thing. I don't do that thing. I do this thing.
So, yeah, well, most religions in the world are about self-improvement and betterment of themselves if they're a religion. And I would say most spiritualities or shamanic traditions are about connecting the individual with the universal, right? In one way or another, you know, whether it's through medicine or meditation or dancing or drumming or whatever the thing is, you're trying to connect the individual with the microcosm, with the macrocosm, as opposed to more codified monotheistic traditions like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, which are there is like an esoteric kind of element to each of those, but more or less those are just standards for obedience, right? Now, Islam, this goes back to the Sam Harris lectures I've been watching on Islam, which are very interesting. He's like, well, at least Christianity can kind of cherry pick. And they'll say, well, that old stuff, stoning people and, you know, selling off the daughters, we don't buy that anymore. We just follow these books, right? But Islam, he says that guys like... who is that? Osama bin Laden. He was just a Muslim. He wasn't a radical. He wasn't like David Koresh or Jim Jones or a radical version of outlier extremist Islam. No, he was following the book. And the reformers are actually revisionists of Islam, which by definition of Islam are apostates. They've denied the true book. So they have to go along with the radicals. They can't say those radicals are offline because those radicals are actually living the fundamentalist tenets. So there's a couple tenets within Islam. First, that the book is perfect. The Quran is the perfect book written by the perfect man, and neither can be questioned without you being basically an infidel, apostate. And it is part of the Hadith to cut the throats of the unbelievers and slay the apostate. So these fundamentalists, like you do. If you don't believe my book, I should kill you because it was written by the perfect man. And the perfect man, I'm putting a label on my head here. The perfect man married a 6-year-old girl but didn't consummate the relationship till she was 9.
Like a gentleman.
Like a gentleman. Now, he waited. He waited till she was 9 to do that. So to criticize that openly, if you're part of that religion, is criticizing the perfect man. And you're not allowed to criticize the perfect man. If you say, well, we don't believe in...
but... and they just cut your hand off right then.
Or head.
But...
Yeah, you're not allowed to do that.
No, yeah,
so the moderate revisionist Muslims that want to live along the idea of Muslim is the religion of peace are technically not Muslims. They are revisionist Muslims that can't really speak out against those fundamentalist lunatics that believe in misogyny and killing homosexuals and all of this stuff. They can't speak out against it because then they're legitimately breaking the tenets of their religion. So it's kind of a tough one.
It's a slippery slope for a book an imaginary world.
Yes, and
a lot of repercussions.
That's definitely gaining a foothold in Western culture. There's huge parallel societies are developing within these Western cultures where within those societies are the fundamentalist sects, and you need to examine what's going on there and side with the more moderate, happy, like revisionist people because they're out there, but also examine the fact that like there's some really toxic elements to this thing, right? You know, Yeah, and so but then you also have religions like Buddhism and Jainism is like a very much belief in reincarnation, and you aren't allowed, like fundamentalist Jains, they filter their water so they don't like drink microbe bugs. They sweep where they walk so they don't step on bugs. They sift their flour so they don't accidentally make bread out of bugs because they really value the life of everybody else. While a fundamentalist Islam, in the Quran, it's like cut the throats of the unbelievers. It's okay to take sex slaves of infidels. It's okay to put infidels into slavery until they convert to Islam. Then you can't have slaves of other Muslims. So it's kind of punish if they don't and reward if they do. So it's a really weird kind of situation. So it's a tough one.
And if you're born into it, what do?
Yeah.
Right?
You
pick a
leave.
side. Yeah, you could try and leave.
You're excommunicated and potentially injured.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. Excommunication is the gentle version.
Yeah.
Injury, honor killings, stonings in some countries, that's a whole other ball of wax. All of this really got put on the forefront for me with the Afghan withdrawal.
Sure.
And the Taliban taking over, and all of a sudden women and, LGBTQ people and journalists and children are kind of like, oh, what do we do? These guys like fucking rape kids.
Yeah.
And it's the religious loophole because it's not really a sin. That's some fucked up value systems, right? And I watched one documentary. It's on Amazon Prime, and it's a Sam Harris is on it, and I forget the other guy's name. He's an ex-Islamist, like a fundamentalist.
Okay.
You can be Muslim, and you can be okay. So what is it? There's jihadist, Islamist, and Muslims. Okay, so a jihadist is the belief system that you can use violence to punish or to take out the unbeliever or to put forward Islamist philosophy because you're waging literal holy war, right? And then Islamist is the belief that Islamic rules should be followed to a T, but you're not always a jihadist. You could just be an Islamist. And then you could be a Muslim that just follows the religion and believes in Allah and the teachings of Muhammad generally, loosely, right? So you need to be a Islamist in order to be a jihadist, and you need to be a Muslim in order to be an Islamist, but just because you're a Muslim, you may not be an Islamist, and just because you're an Islamist, you may not be a jihadist. Does that make sense? Like terrorist? So this interview is with a guy who used to be, it's a back and forth between the two of them, Sam Harris and this other guy, and it's called Islam, the Religion of Peace, I think maybe, on Amazon. And they talk back and forth about this. And he had the interesting point. When he was an Islamist and living in the UK, in the college, they put out a poster, and it was a woman with a full niqab, kind of like the ninja outfit, with an AK-47. And the poster said, "Women of the West, cover up or shut up." Because they knew that the faculty was so worried about political correctness that they wouldn't call them on their culture, because they didn't want to be appearing to be prejudicial against this potentially maligned group. So they put out these controversial posters regularly. And when the faculty came up and said, this is pushing the limit, you're telling women of the West to cover up or shut up, they countered directly with, that's racist. You're being prejudiced against our culture, when they were intentionally pushing the narrative of this extremist philosophy. And eventually one of their members murdered somebody on campus over this kind of rhetoric, right? And it allowed terrorism. It allowed a foothold to terrorism, like that fundamentalist, that tolerance without critique of a hardcore fundamentalist religion created the environment that allowed violence, right? So I think that we need to examine totalitarian ideas across the board. And it doesn't matter if it's coming from the left or from the right, or whether the left is allowing tolerance from the right because they're brown guys.
Yeah. Well, see, and even in that example, it seems like even most, these Western rules about freedom of speech, they would kind of not apply that you could keep that up, that it would actually could be censored, because it's what's the implication of this? What's the directive of this?
Oh, I agree.
Is it to create violence? Because if it is to create violence and it's a direct kind of thing, then it can be censored, right?
Well, you would hope so. Although the freedom of speech in the West, we see more and more being used to censor what they would consider racism, homophobia, transphobia, bigotry, almost to the point of conservatism and patriotism, right? You know, let's just be honest. And if it's, what do they call it? The bigotry of lazy expectations, where you're not holding certain communities to the same standard. So they won't censor speech that is inappropriate if they feel that it might be perceived as being racist if they said it. You know, like what you're doing is toxic. You got to stop doing that. Oh, you're racist. Oh, no, I'm not. Go ahead. Keep doing whatever you want, because I'm not going to have an opinion on, you know, this poster that advocates for violence because you're brown guys and you're Muslim, and I wouldn't want to be considered Islamophobic. So you could do whatever you want, and eventually it goes towards jihad, right? Or somebody becomes a jihadist out of that group because the tolerance went that far.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the tolerance of racist speech. Well, I think people should have an opinion to question whatever narrative they want. But when it gets to the point where it's starting to be advocating violence or, you know, weaponry or organizing that like hard stuff.
There's been lots of that going on in the south of the border lately with people be like, we love our Second Amendment, and you're like, wait a minute, what the fuck's that mean? You know, like why are you referencing the need to have guns right now? You mean you want to shoot somebody? Like,
well, that was their entire thing,
right? How much closer do you got to get to saying it before we're like, are you just telling you to shoot people?
I think that's what they were.
Yeah.
With that Kyle Rittenhouse and all of those guys. Those guys
They're
are
still
all
doing it. Yep.
Yeah. The Second Amendment trip was to overthrow a tyrannical government when they had muskets, not fully automatic 30-round magazines and AR-15s, right?
Right.
No weapons of war, right?
Yeah.
And
when they went to go actually do it, they brought sticks and bats instead of guns, and they just used the guns in the streets for some reason against people that have no control over the government.
yeah, well, that's exactly.
What are you using this for exactly, guys?
It's lateral violence.
Yeah,
Everybody fighting
right?
against each other.
It's not what it's designed for.
I had a good buddy. He books punk gigs in Saskatoon at Amigos and stuff, and we were talking about this one time. I think it had to do with Savage Henry, and he's like, "It's weird, man. You know, because we're all in the same boat. We're all in the same boat. We all know right and wrong, but I see the left eating itself because even within the left, it's almost like a competition for purity politics." Who is the most pure and righteous one among us that's so sterling that they can be held above everybody else and, you know, condemn all the other people? You know, are you an oppressor? Are your parents oppressors? Were your heritage oppressors? Is your gender an oppressor? Confess. Confess to your sins. Bow before those that feel that you're wrong, and then you'll be forgiven. But you need to own your oppressive nature. 6-year-old boys born in Saskatoon are now like going to school and like, I've got so much privilege. What the fuck? These kids, they're kids. They're kids. Don't tell them, don't push them to the back of the room and give them a lecture on how they've oppressed people or their gender or ethnicity or sexuality has oppressed people and therefore they need to be brought down notches. Just let them be kids. Let them be kids. But to say that runs the razor's edge of being considered a racist or a bigot or anything else, right? God forbid.
Well,
oh no.
Yeah, I guess. I think, I don't know if that seems a little young, 6, you know, but I mean, the idea of like critical race theory, for example, and stuff like that, like it's not taught in schools, it's like law school level, that kind of shit. But that concept of there being like, you know, a lot of the societal systems we have were kind of built around the model of racism and oppression.
Yes.
And that, because there's an active effort to not teach that to people because
That's great.
Because people want to control that still, right?
I agree with that.
And exactly, so that's the fine line that's walked.
But that's not calling a white boy racist by nature. Because
I know, but that's what that discussion is, though, is about how people of certain colors, certain genders, certain level of affluency have a different starting point than other people. You know what I mean?
Traditionally had a
absolutely.
See,
and I agree with you that you can't point at people and go, no, you're this thing. But I think that's said to take away from the discussion of not having that at all. A lot of times from some people, it's like, no, they're doing that to kids. And you're like, are they though? Or are they just having the discussion that traditionally these people, you may look like this person. You may look like the person that has been this thing, right? But that's just teaching you what history is then at that point.
Well, teaching an accurate history is one thing.
And that's
building a society
and that's been
for
purposely
tomorrow.
not done too, right? Like residential school shit left out
Yes.
of purposely, right? So
But I don't think what's going on right now is necessarily teaching an accurate history anyways. Like you talk about the pendulum swing. I think we're right in the middle of the pendulum swing the other way. My daughter went to what's was called a Girls Rock Camp in Saskatoon, and I absolutely support Girls Rock Camp. I donated money to it. I put her through it. And Girls Rock Camp was to teach young women and gender nonconforming kids and trans women and trans boys, because they have vaginas, and queer kids about music and feminism and you know, stuff like that. But boys, straight boys, couldn't go into this camp. So I asked one of the organizers, I'm like, so it's pretty much everybody but boys camp, right? And she's like, well, I think that's actually a little short-sighted in what we're doing. I'm like, can you imagine if you actually allowed anybody to go to this camp and you still educated them on black musicians that were women and, you know, what actually they contributed to this society, as opposed to excluding this little group?
Well, so here's
Well, but
the other
they-
side of that, though.
Well, I've heard the other side. Well, okay, go
I'll,
ahead.
I'll
Yeah,
explain
yeah.
to you what my vision of the other side of that is. Girls specifically, or people of those groups as well, maybe don't feel as comfortable in a group with other boys doing those sort of things. That's why they do segregate some like that, and have had much benefit with younger kids, like separating math classes, separating English classes, that kind of thing.
So we're supporting
If
segregation.
you just let me finish, please. Because of these systemic differences where girls don't feel comfortable speaking up during class because boys are boisterous and they're quick to get up and they do that. So they don't feel comfortable in that world because that's kind of how it's been. So then taking them apart for those times so they're allowed to flourish in the areas where they can feel comfortable. Because maybe guys feel the same way too. If it's a majority of girls in the class, maybe they don't feel comfortable being good at something that's seen more feminine, right? Whereas if it's all guys in a home ec class all sewing, if you're just doing well at it, you're doing well at it. You're not doing well at a girly thing. Same thing for the girls. They're not trying to get into a masculine world of playing rock and roll music. They're doing things with other girls.
Well, they are.
To see how that.
That Girls Rock Camp was to play, like, there was death metal bands and there was like rock and roll and stuff like that. But okay, so we're advocating segregation, and we're justifying
But here's-
segregation.
No, we're not. Okay, what I'm saying is, at certain ages, sometimes separating the genders for a bit for different things does show benefit. You still integrate them and still have them living together and being in schools together, but sometimes separating them at critical years so that girls will put their hand up in math class and then actually engage and learn more does show benefit. And I think that this would be an example of that, because I think if there was a rock camp that just went on, it would probably be fun and boys and girls would all go there, but there's going to be different girls that maybe wouldn't be comfortable in a place where it would be that, just because they feel like they wouldn't get a chance to speak. I didn't really see this myself because I didn't understand it till one time my brother explained it to me from his point of view, because it was him and my mom were talking one time after I'd moved out, and he's telling this story, and my mom's like, geez, Marshall, how come you ever told stories like this? And he goes, well, because Dusty was always around. You know, I can be the guy in the room with the girl. They're going like, well, I guess I'm not going to get to talk today because old Loudmouth's going to run the whole thing. Where there's less of that when it's a similar playing field. And I'm not saying continue to do that through high school and continue to keep them separated so they don't. But sometimes that's not a bad place for them to grow in the ways they need to. Again, around other people that they identify with.
Well, I'd like to see a society where we're all learning the same lessons, that where we're building a newer society for everybody, where young men are also included in the education, as opposed to just reprimanding for their ethnicity or their gender or their orientation, where a girls' rock camp would go on and they would educate them on communication and these like really important people that have come up, and like women's contribution to music, and the young boys were privy to this. The other side would be, okay, if we're segregating for the sake of comfort or for the sake of education and the sake of, I guess, everybody being better people, where are the men's groups or the boys' groups that are actually teaching men these programs or teaching men these techniques of communication, of emotional intelligence? They don't exist.
Well,
And they're not existing.
Organized sports or boys clubs, the actual
that's
boys
not,
clubs.
That's
or boys
really
clubs.
not what I'm talking about at all. If we're talking about educating for a future world, where is the education for a future world? All I'm seeing, at least in the groups that I see on my fetish community, in my daughter's, I guess, world, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, is a lot of reprimanding young men for legitimately things that they had no control over. And they're not even giving them the tools to deprogram what masculinity is. You can say, oh yeah, they have sports and they have the army and they've got all this stuff. Yeah, you got all these things that are going to encourage hypermasculinity. But then you say hypermasculinity is bad. So where are the programs to help educate young men to be more balanced individuals? There's all kinds of programming out there for self-help groups for young ladies or for the LGBTQ community and da-da-da-da-da. But when they start excluding young straight men or basically being sexist, prejudicial, racist, and saying, you're the villain, we don't want you here. Oh, cool. You're really solving problems.
I don't know. I think we see it differently again.
Okay.
You see, you're the villain. We don't want you here. I see, I'm not comfortable with you here.
Yeah.
That is a difference.
Isn't it the same thing?
No, a barking dog can make you uncomfortable. Doesn't mean it's evil. Doesn't mean it's a villain.
And just because it's a dog doesn't mean it's barking.
Shouldn't
And
be in
just
the room
because
with
you're
you while you're
uncomfortable-
trying to do this thing, though. Maybe for this
What
thing
if
you
the
don't
dog
need a
doesn't
barking
bark? It's
in the
just a
room.
dog.
Okay.
And you've convinced that all dogs bark and all dogs bite, and so we should keep the dogs away.
In these separate little exclusionary times,
Exclusionary, segregated spaces. I get it.
occasionally.
So segregated is okay.
Occasionally, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally, why is it just women's shelters? Why isn't it just a shelter?
This is true. I agree. And at the same time,
No, I disagree with that. That's what I'm saying. There should be shelters specifically for women because if you're abused by men, you don't necessarily
should
want
there
to be
be
in the
sheltered
shelters.
for men that want to
Sure,
get away?
maybe.
Yes,
maybe there should be. By all means.
Are there?
Well, then you should start a petition to get it going, I guess, Pat.
This is
If
what
that's
I'm
the thing
talking
that's
about.
gapped and missing
This is what
in
I'm talking
society,
about.
right?
And
If
at
you
the
think
same
that's
time-
missing, then create it, right? Because it doesn't need to be there
It
for
does
many
need
of these
to be
things.
there. It does need to be there. There needs to be support groups for men that want to be better men.
Okay.
There does need to be
Well,
education.
you are doing that, sir. You
I
are
am.
doing that with your program.
I am.
Yeah.
And this is what
I
I'm
know you
saying,
haven't made it
is that there's-
exclusionary, but it's majority men that get involved.
No, it's
right?
going to be.
Okay, well,
It's
fine.
going to be a fraternity.
Oh my God. Sorry, did you just tell me you're going to create a gender exclusionary space so you can work on men's stuff after just berating me about the
I'm
concept
not
of that?
berating anybody.
Well, okay, fair enough. After saying it was a negative thing to do exactly that.
The only reason we need
During
fraternities
segregation.
is because men are being excluded from these educations. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why it's necessary.
Okay, then that's the
And
balance
it's
that needs to be
interesting. I
struck,
also find
guess.
it interesting is if somebody else says, I want to segregate based on things and common values in my world, that's exclusionary because you need to include everybody in your group as long as it's one side. You can have an exclusionary LGBTQ community. You can have an exclusionary black community. You can have an exclusionary brown community. You can have an exclusionary, I don't know, a knitting circle, unless you're men. Unless you're men, because then you are exploitive and you are oppressive and you are bigoted. And I think there's an incredible double standard happening in our society right now. I do. And I see it moving more and more. And it's creating a division. It's creating a large division between people that are feeling left out. They're like, okay, you don't want me, I won't participate. That's cool. Well, that's the existence of incels that don't understand the growing society, right? Because nobody's really reaching out to help educate anybody.
That's fair enough. I can agree that there isn't enough men out there teaching soon-to-be men how to be men.
Well, the fathers have been removed. We've got
Yeah.
a generation raised by single moms. Online, you're seeing men getting reprimanded and torn apart left and right. Nobody's really reaching out with empathy and compassion, saying, hey, man, you're just making a mistake here. You need to understand. I don't know.
Okay, you know what? Now I understand where you're coming from. Now I understand
Okay,
what you're saying.
so I'm wearing our
No,
TSR
sorry,
shirt.
because honestly, this just wasn't clicking for me. And now I know what you mean. You would like to be handled with empathy
Why?
instead of scorn,
I believe
instead of
most-
attack.
I-
Okay,
and-
no, because sorry, Pat. I had this feeling that you, like in my head, the way you were talking, I was like, like everybody's always just attacking, and I'm like, I just don't see that. But I totally understand what you mean now. That when it's being brought to your attention, it's never done gently for men. Things are not brought to our attention in the same way we would do the things for a lot of other.
Well, because men can handle it, right?
Exactly, right? And when we react negatively when we're handled like that, well, then we're too loud, we're too explosive, we're violent, we're whatever it is. When it's like, well, why didn't you handle me with the same kind of
Empathy
grace
you wanted
would-
me to handle you with.
an elderly woman? Why wouldn't you handle me the same as that?
'Cause you're a man,
'cause
you could take it.
And that's the double standard that we're stuck. Okay, now I'm starting to see what you're trying to say, my friend.
So in our men's group, that we're having a meeting for on Monday. I'm wearing the shirt. It's our unintoxicated shirt, right? And that's not just about being sober, like intoxicated.
I really like the logo actually.
The Dragon
That's
Slayer?
really dope. Yeah.
Thank you. But what we're doing is we're going to have a conversation about our own toxicity and what does toxic mean to us. So if we're talking about becoming intoxicated, well, man, that's just something that's poisoning you one way or another. It's not just booze or drugs.
Yeah.
It can also be other areas of toxicity in your life, but it's all individual. My toxicity isn't my neighbor's toxicity, but we're going to have a conversation about what in our lives we feel we are toxic and how we can address that to become unintoxicated,
Yeah.
right? And like DSR, to me at least, it's a self-improvement move or organization. It's not about sobriety. It's not about fitness. It's not about whatever a lot of people seem to think it is. Like, although sober people are going to think it's like an NA kind of thing, and the fitness guys think it's a fitness thing or whatever. No, it's about making yourself better than you were yesterday. And I think men need these environments where they are allowed to be vulnerable. And, well, of course, they're going to need a guide so they don't go off on a tangent and, yeah, fuck that bitch, I can't believe I can't get laid. No, we're going to get to the bottom,
Yeah.
like, why do you feel that you need that?
Yeah.
And how can you communicate your needs without it coming off as confrontational?
Well, you know what, and you're right, and it was that it's not as commonplace now because, like you said, it'll be considered exclusionary. Like these men's only clubs, right? Where that's you go down there and you talk to the boys at the end of the week about whatever's going on and deal with your shit, and that's where everybody's stuff comes out.
One guy...
Yeah.
One guy pointed out, he's like, well, this used to be what I'd get when I go for beers. But unfortunately, when you're sitting around a bunch of dudes having beers, more or less, you're going to end up with that toxic shit bubbling up.
Yeah,
right.
Fuck
that
as
bitch,
the
man.
depressant you're drinking continues to bring the room down.
Yeah, you're not really
Yeah.
dedicating to working on yourself or to be a better human being. And I don't see a lot of that education happening for young men or for white men or for any of the, let's just say, the blue-collar trucker, rigger, miner types, where they're encouraged to just be a better human. And, hey, man, this is what white privilege is. This is what misogyny is. This is what our expectations of manhood have always been and how we can unpack that. Now, the only people that can do that education largely is listening to the people of color, to women, to the queer people that you know.
Yeah.
And I've done a ton of listening, and I'm good friends with a lot of these people, and I've taken what they've learned, and I've tried to incorporate it in my life. Now, unfortunately, a lot of my well-meaning left friends hear me say things, and they're like, well, that's because that's bigoted. And I'm like, no, it's not. We're trying to create better white men. Right? But even you say it.
Yeah, because let's finish the thought. We're all kind of fucked. We're all kind of
Yes.
broken. We're all kind of shitty. We all have expectations on us from society. Plus, we have the benefits of being what we are that then we have to be, like you say, guilted and held accountable for. Yeah.
Trust me,
No?
you go on Twitter, you're going to learn all that.
Yeah, yeah.
But we're not going to learn how to be better, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And it's
Well, and
fun.
I think that's a fine line that like a lot of people can't walk, where it's like by learning about those things, and then even if you do see it in yourself, not taking it as an attack. You know,
Oh,
being
yeah,
like, hey,
yeah.
these things are all out there and existing, and if you identify with some of them, that sucks, but that doesn't mean it's you. You know.
See, and that's the other element. Like, I would like to say, hey, anybody who wants to learn about like redefining masculinity, yeah, check it out. But and I don't care what ethnicity you're from or what your orientation is. You know, ideally, you know, hey, if you're a trans man, you want to learn how to be a better man, come on down. But the chances are,
Yeah, you're new to it.
yeah, you're new to being a man. All right, dude.
That's probably not the right thing.
Let's go to the
say. I'm
powerlifting.
sorry,
Well, no,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
fuck it. That's why not?
Yeah, yeah.
That should be valid.
Well, no,
as
because
fuck.
what I meant
You're
was
new
is
to
maybe
being a man.
No, but maybe they were in their head a man the whole time. So as far
Yes.
as you know what I mean.
Well, hopefully
Because
they have been.
new to having man parts doing these man things that you're required to.
Well,
now.
hopefully they've been a man in their head. See,
Yeah.
this is a whole other ball game because I've got some politically incorrect ideas on real gender dysphoria and people that have lived their entire lives struggling with being in the wrong body versus people that can just choose an identity willy-nilly.
Yeah.
And to differentiate between those two people, which I would consider legitimate transgendered and transgendered for identity.
Yeah.
You can't just willy-nilly choose shit. You should actually...
You can though, right?
Well, I don't have to accept it then.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
You know, and that's kind of-
exactly though.
yeah.
Exactly, right?
And
I mean, you can say
unfortunately-
whatever you want. You
and-
don't have to accept it, but you also don't have to be a dick about
No,
it, right? You don't have
no.
to attack them. You don't have to go after them. You don't have to make them clarify their
But that
stance.
being
you can just
said-
let them exist.
but
I'm
that-
not saying you're being a dick. I'm just saying. You know
That
what
being
I mean?
said, okay, so I wrote an essay on the fetish site recently,
Okay.
and I knew it was going to be poking a hornet's nest, but it is what it is. It is what
You've
it
got a
is.
stick specifically 4 hornets nests.
Yeah, it's my dink. Anyway, and this is what the essay was about.
He did.
I'm like, it's a politically incorrect thing, but I'd like
love
to
it.
think that our sex life doesn't need to be inclusive. You don't need to open the door to anybody who decides that you need to include me in your private life, because there's a movement in the fetish community that if you don't, you're bigot. If you want somebody to disclose if they're cis or if they're trans beforehand, you're transphobic. If you refuse to engage with somebody who isn't non-binary, that's gross and you're being transphobic. And I'm like, I think a person's orientation should be,
part of the
privileged.
conversation at some point. You
well-
suck dick? Are you into that? No, that's not your scene. Okay, fair enough. We should move along.
Do you have compatible biological parts?
Well, and if that's what you're into, because I mean that's also like if you're not and you're like, no, I want some incompatible parts, you might want to find that out. I want to get there
Yes.
and find out. Well, fuck, I was dealing with a woman the whole time. I really wanted a penis when I pulled this back.
Yes,
You know?
or exactly, or
It can go the other way.
Yeah, I like an
I've
Audi
heard,
while I
yeah.
have an innie, or
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
the case may be. But I think that's a person's right to say, I am
Yeah, and
attracted.
that seems counterintuitive to the whole thing you're trying to do, where it's like, no, we want people to be upfront and honest when you're engaging in these things, because it's not some back alley orgy. It's like, hey, we're all upfront adults doing things together as adults. We should have conversations.
So that's there's a double standard, and I see two different narratives coming out. So the one woman, or actually, I just committed a hate crime. The one person, they told us that I don't even know what words I'm supposed to use, but if you. Okay, how did this go? It's so tough. If you're a straight man, you should have no problem dating a trans person, because a trans woman is a real woman, regardless of their genitalia. And straight people are attracted to women.
Yeah, here's the thing, though. I'm not attracted to every woman.
Well, and I'm not attracted to dinks. Boners don't give me boners.
Yeah.
I've tried it, didn't work,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
thanks for coming
Yeah.
out. But realistically, if I wanted to date a woman, I'm hoping for biological compatibility. Do I need to use that many syllables? Or do I just say, are you a real woman? Oh, I am a real woman, but I got a dink and I got a girl dink.
Yeah.
It's not the same thing. Can we have that conversation?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not debating
Well,
that.
and I mean, and honestly, why would they want to engage with someone then who wouldn't
Wouldn't be
want that?
attracted to them.
If anything, yeah, it's going to be more headache down the road.
well, and potential.
And I mean, I can understand people being like, well, you didn't handle that very sensitively, but it's like, well, and I don't know. What more do you want from me? We're here to
are we
fuck
all social
and
workers?
slap each other's asses.
Are we all
like-
social workers that we need to be educated in all of that?
Right?
And so now in the kink community, the big movement within the progressive people is to really examine your biases, why you were attracted to certain things and why you aren't attracted to certain things, and if you think that is fair or what. And basically, the long and short of it is to reprogram what you're attracted to.
That the whole attempt to like kind of like configure what like, well, no, like if you
Open
like
your
this, then you
boundaries.
should like this.
You should open your boundaries. And I'm
I
like-
feel a little bit like that too with like the concept of like plus size models. You know, where
Okay.
it's like no, big is beautiful, and it's like it can be.
Yeah.
I don't find great big round arms where I can't see the elbow attractive. That's not an attractive look to me. It doesn't do anything for me.
I'm just saying, I've tried it.
Yeah, right.
it
I had it.
didn't do anything.
I've had a grandmother. I that doesn't attract. You know, the bingo wings do not do anything for me. No, but then it's, well, you're being sized. It's like, no, I just
Yes.
know what I like, and I mean, I don't have to speak out on that. I don't have to comment on them. I don't have to go, oh, that's a gross magazine, because I'm
Oh,
not
no,
going
no.
to. But I also don't have to, when you tell me, isn't she beautiful? I don't have to go,
I'm not
oh, I
feeling it.
totally agree. Oh yeah, for a big, no, I don't have to fucking do any of that, because you asked me then. If I went out into the world and I just did that attacking people, that's, you're a dick. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But you can't expect me, because of whatever society standards you think apply here, that I have to fucking adhere to them too, because that's in my mind, motherfucker. Like, I'm not even saying
Well,
that.
that's just it. They're trying to get you to review your mind. It's like they're putting you through
I got into
a
it.
re-education, a psychological re-education.
I got into a bit of a fucking argument with a couple girlfriends recently, and they were talking about like, you know, like, well,
Now
you
he's the
can't,
conservative.
you can't go out with cellulite if you're a girl, because people will say things, and you can't this and you can't. I'm like, I don't know, man. I said, like, I feel like we're in a pretty body positive time generally, and I said, like, I just don't think that there's like people, like dudes walking around being like, hey, put your fucking cellulite away, and they're like, both of them right away were like, well, but girls will, and I'm like, okay, so then that's not a societal problem, that's half of a societal problem, right?
That's a girl's version of beauty. And as being a fat guy,
Yeah.
a fat uncircumcised guy, short.
He's painting the picture here, folks.
Yeah, you really want to get it, you know, who's not exceptionally well endowed. You know, there's no shortage of male body shaming out there, and you know,
man.
I'm not the naked guy at the pool for very much reasons.
Yeah.
You know, or I don't like go swimming in public because I don't like getting stared at. I have body issues. I have insecurities, and
Well, to me, it's like a very fundamental thing. It's not that it's like, oh, I'm ashamed of my body and I'm whatever. No, I have psoriasis and it looks terrible. I have ingrown hairs on the inside of my thigh. I don't care who that's on. That's not an attractive look.
well, it's just not something you prefer to engage with.
Fuck
And I
no.
think, well,
And again, I'm not going to comment on it on somebody else, but don't try and tell me, isn't that a hot looking ingrown hair? Look how pussy it is. You can barely see the hair peeking out the top.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not into that.
Well,
And I don't need to be.
And I think it's fair to have your preferences. I like oranges more than I like apples. Are you going to spend 6 hours to convince me how apples are the exact same as oranges, and I should really consider that apples are
It's
equal?
just all fruit. It's all vitamin
or
C.
am I allowed to say I prefer oranges for whatever fucking reason? You know, and
Well, that's the line that's been crossed. It's been like, you can't even have the thought. Because if you have the thought, well, that's like, well, that's a hate crime. It's like, no, I didn't say anything out loud. I didn't think whatever the fuck I want. When I start saying things out loud or directing them at you, because that was the other thing that annoyed me about this conversation I was having was then I was like, give me a fucking example that wasn't in high school where either of you have had this happen to you, where somebody's been like, oh, you're gross, look at your cellulite. And they're like, well, I was at work and I was sitting at the table and one of my coworkers came out of the gym and she was in her 50s and she had some cellulite and somebody was sitting at the other table to the other guys was like, oh, geez, that looks gross. She should put that away. And she's like, see, that's that. And I'm like,
Yep.
First off, no, that's not that.
Oh,
like,
yep.
You know what I mean? Like first off, that wasn't you. That was a different person. You took offense on behalf of.
Oh, that's nice of her.
Secondly, this person, unless you went over and told them that Bill said that, would never in 1,000 fucking years ever know. These people said it amongst themselves with no intention to go and harm the woman. And yeah, they shouldn't have said anything, sure, in a perfect world. But that's like saying you can't have the fucking thought and then amongst friends say something kind of gross and stupid just because you're like, oh, fuck, I thought this, you know? You can't do that, even though there's no chance she's ever going to hear it or be harmed by it. And I'm like, that's unfair. You can't have that level of control over everybody else's fucking thoughts anymore.
this is the direction that I see us going in. And you know what? It might be just a byproduct of transitioning times where we're moving towards a more considerate consciousness.
Yeah.
And we're just
But we're still vengeful. Hey, like
Well,
we're like, you better be fucking considerate, motherfucker. If you have an inconsiderate thought, I'm gonna pull it out of your fucking head. And then you're like, wait, what? How did
we're
you get to be
moving-
so violent?
if you could imagine moving from more of an animalistic side to more of the spiritual side, or
Yeah.
the human being versus a human doing,
Yeah.
and that's maybe part of it where we're learning how to engage with each other more compassionately, but that's the principle, engaging more compassionately, and compassion goes both ways.
Yeah.
If you're expecting the average inconsiderate asshole to be more compassionate, you better be compassionate to that inconsiderate asshole, right? You,
Well,
like-
and maybe they've never seen it.
that's why they're an inconsiderate asshole.
Yeah.
I'm rough around the edges because the environment I grew up in necessitated me to be rough around the edges for survival, right? And now that I don't need that anymore, it's really tough for
when
me
you
to
stopped
shed
having
those.
a haircut just as a fashion. It's like, no,
Yeah.
this is all functional, man.
Yeah.
I either need to show people who I am or I can't get it handled onto.
Yeah, you can't pull me around by my hair if I don't got it. You know,
Yeah,
nobody
right?
can swing me
That
around by my
isn't problems
ponytail.
that everyone else has had in their life. Some
Yeah.
people just have haircuts because they like them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
They think it
right?
looks good. Their part works that way. You know what I
They
mean?
can't just grab a handful of your hair and bang you into a bumper outside Riley's. Yeah, like that time.
I'm always working in hypotheticals, Pat. You know
Yeah,
that.
right. I remember one time, story time.
And you know what? And everybody's like, about fucking time, you guys with your no story.
Yeah. Bad stories, good stories, bad stories.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm leaving Riley's, and I'm pretty much the sober guy, and I got two friends that are really shit-faced and ready to rumble, and neither's really that guy. And I'm like, okay. And the one guy's like, fuck you to the bouncers. I'm like, no, let's get the fuck out of here. But Riley's, for those people that aren't local, was one of the most notorious shit kicker bars in Saskatoon. At the end of the night, you could see no less than 5 to 6 fights, you know, guys, girls, groups, you name it, you know. It was pretty
All the flavors.
raunchy. Fight, fuck, or flee at the end of that night, you know. So we're on our way out. I'm trying to get everybody out, probably about 1 a.m. And my one buddy's like flipping off bouncers. I get him out, and then my other friend, I'm trying to get him out, and we're walking by this other group of guys, and he's like, fuck you, you piece of shit. Well, these other guys are off-duty bouncers coming to pick up their homies, and all of a sudden, wham, starts like smoking out the one guy. And back in the day, I was in a metal band. I had a ponytail and stuff. And I'm like, no, man, there's no fucking problem here. I just got to get my buddies out. I'm the driver. This guy, other guy just grabs me by the hair. And that was it. Uppercut, pushing me into bouncers, swinging me around like a fucking pinata, hitting me on the ground, holding my hair, kicking me the whole nine, right? And I took the shit kicking. Everybody else got a couple shots, but I'm the guy who got the beating. So I get them all dropped off. I go to my brother's house. I'm like, okay, I want a can of gas and I want to shave my head and like, I'm going to go back. And my brother stops me for a second because I'm all fucked up. He's like, is this really what you want to be doing? Like, is this where you want to go? You got to shave your head to continue this? And I'm like, ooh, yeah, you're right. But I was also pretty mad that nobody really had my back in that situation. I'm like, I just got worked for no fucking reason. And you're just like, oh, well, shitty for you, you know?
Yeah.
So I guess, and I was the good guy. I wasn't trying to start problems. I was actually trying to be the peacekeeper. And I took a dirty licking for that one. Yeah, that one.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
So-
now you know.
well, and I love getting lectured on how toxic I am. I love it, you know,
Yep.
because I'm an oppressive white male.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's a tough one. It's a tough one. Yeah. If only.
Well, I don't think you're personally oppressive, Pat.
I try not to oppress you.
I haven't seen you impress anybody
Yeah,
lately.
no, not
You're saying
lately.
impressive, right?
Yeah, I don't think you're that impressive. Yeah, no.
Holy fuck.
Yeah.
This has been lovely.
I think that covered everything I had in my book. What about you?
Fully uncovered. Oh, my 3 notes.
Yeah, 3 notes. I think you got those.
Actually, what did I even write down?
I
here?
got one last.
I can't even read what I wrote. Jesus fucking Christ. Is this a Gandalf top?
I have no clue.
I'm serious. Gandalf top Bond. Well, that says Joe Rogan has COVID.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
No, I'm not laughing at that also, by the way. That was the other thing I was going to talk about.
He's taking a crazy concoction of whatever he can get in his system as long as he doesn't have to get a vaccine. Fuck.
That's what he's trying to do, hey? Because I was
Yeah.
wondering. I was like, I would have figured he could get a vaccine, but I've never heard him say it, and it makes more sense that he never did, because I could see him sitting there going, well, I don't know. You know about Fauci? Okay.
What about it? Everybody that takes a
donkey.
vaccine is called a sheep, but now they're taking literal sheep medicine, a sheep dewormer to get rid of it.
Ivermectin. Get your fucking ivermectin. You know the worst thing about that is they were saying like what it's been. So people, they've been taking it and then thinking that they're like, oh well, fuck. It turns out I did have a parasite. Look what I'm shitting out. And then their doctors are like, no, that's the lining from your fucking intestines that this thing's peeling and sloughing off, and you're shitting it out, thinking, oh, maybe I've got some sort of parasite or no. And they said like potentially these people can be shitting themselves to death. Like you just get diarrhea and you can't stop, and that's it.
They actually are the parasites. They are. And taking the parasite remover
I took some ivermectin and it kicked me out of my house. I don't know. What does that mean?
out of society in general. I don't know.
I can't put
I'm
my
living in a
shoes
leper
back
colony.
on. Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. Turns
Yeah,
out I'm
yeah.
the parasite. It's just, again, I don't even fucking know, man. Like, people that write for The Onion and shit are just like, we give up.
Yeah,
like
it's
just-
writing itself by
What the
this time.
fuck else can you do? What more satire can you fucking do? And then, I don't know, man. It's just...
Yeah, it's very
Gross.
interesting. Yeah, I saw the video. He's like, I'm feeling great on this concoction. It's a good thing I make $100 million that I can afford
well, 'cause
some.
some of that shit that he had too was crazy fucking expensive.
Oh,
He was
yeah.
on the with that Regeneron.
Okay.
Which I mean also sounds like it's a pyramid scheme, doesn't it? You know
Yes,
what
it
I mean?
does.
You want to buy into my fucking Regeneron? What?
Well, it's what is it? Magic Johnson had AIDS and he's still alive, so money cures it. Money, if
fucking
you got
right.
enough money, you can get away with that shit.
Absolutely. There's nothing. There's nothing.
That's
Can
what
I
they say.
think? Well, no, that's not true.
What, nothing that-
Stephen Hawking probably would have like danced a bit if he could have.
Well, I don't know if he was rich or just famous. Like,
Oh, you know what? Fair enough, because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
often get them and Bill Gates confused in my head
Oh.
until I start to picture them, and then I'm like, "Were they the same person?" And he's just sneaking around sometimes.
man, it's
You know what I
Batman.
mean?
Or no,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Clark Kent and
Yes,
Superman.
exactly. Different
You
glasses,
never
and he
see
just
them in
slouches the
same
chair a bit. Hey,
place.
yeah. Are you the same guy?
Well, speaking of
And
money,
they're like, "Do you have your grade 9?"
yeah, I make computers.
Do I?
So speaking of money grabs, Spencer Eldon, who was the baby in Nirvana's Nevermind. is suing the.
Is that real?
Yes,
Is that a
it
real
is
thing?
legitimate.
Because I kept seeing like satire ones afterwards of like the one dog from the Alice in Chains album. You know?
Okay,
Like-
but no,
and I'm
this
like,
is real.
Oh my! Fuck,
he's claiming that
that's
he
wild.
suffered lifelong damages as a result of the child pornography that he was subjected to 30 years ago on the Nevermind album.
If that's child pornography, we all go to jail. Because who didn't own that
Yeah.
fucking album?
Oh man, not only that, you should see what my parents took pictures of me as a child. I've got fucking me and my brother naked.
Yeah.
I got all
Well,
kinds.
to be fair though, they probably didn't sell like 35 million copies of it.
No, they didn't without my consent.
I'm not sure how many Nirvana sold of Nevermind, but
He's suing over a dozen people for $150,000 each. So hopefully he wants to become a $1.5 millionaire, and if it goes well. And I've got a quote here from the lawsuit that says Cobain chose the image depicting Spencer like a sex worker grabbing for a dollar bill that is positioned dangling from a fishhook in front of his nude body with his penis explicitly displayed. Now, Eldon has also recreated the image several times for re-releases of the album, like as recently as the 25th anniversary. He's 30 now. Always with clothes or swim trunks on, and has expressed mixed feelings about it in interviews that have grown increasingly negative throughout the years, especially when he realized that there was no statute of limitation on child pornography.
oh sure, so if you could just
So
snag
that's
some cash.
his cash cow.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so interesting.
I don't know, man. That I don't know. See what the fuck's gonna happen with that. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh, man.
it's a
What
small
kind
enough
of-
amount. Maybe somebody just pays when it's 150,000 each. If it's people with money, you know.
So if this is precedence law, right? Like if law is based on precedence, and this kid now gets, or this young man gets a settlement for not consenting to his picture being distributed, will every child that gets mad at their parents putting them on social media or Instagram or
I gotta
making any
think that,
cash
like,
or baby
whatever-
models
I gotta think
now
that
be able to
whatever
sue?
rule made it okay that could exist in the first place has got to give you carte blanche on that, because it clearly can't be fucking pornography if it's on the cover of an album that's being sold.
It had
in a
no
drugstore.
sexual context.
That's the difference between him
Or
doing
erotic
it and him
context.
doing it as an adult with his dink hanging out. You know what I mean? That's the reason he had to put on swimming trunks, because those aren't the same things.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you can argue that to a very small slice of fucking people that maybe that is a sexual thing, but I mean, pick any Britney Spears album cover, I guess. You know what I mean? She wasn't a child with her things out, but I mean, that's going to be sexual to somebody somewhere.
Well, Christina
that's why it
Aguilera's,
exists. That's why
yeah.
they did them that way.
Yeah,
you know?
100%. Well,
And this one,
in
as
that case,
far as making this baby with its dink out look like a sex worker too, I feel like that was kind of the point of all this, wasn't it? That we're all like just chasing this fucking dollar, and you know,
Yep.
it's the art of it, isn't it?
well, yeah, just hustle and hustle
Instead
and
of just
hustle.
being like, fuck, man, I was involved in one of the greatest albums of all time and the most iconic album art of all time.
But did he make money from it?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
this-
See, if he was smart, he could have. Because if he had any sort of personality, he'd be on fucking TikTok like every other dickhead in the world, and he'd be making money off that. He must be a real douchebag, is what his problem is.
Yeah, I think so.
That makes sense.
He's got no drive for
Yeah.
better in his life. We are probably
I'm really
running
judging this guy
close-
harshly. I don't know. Maybe he's just all traumatized up, and he's like,
I
"No,
doubt it.
Everybody's seen my dink. My
that
baby
I'm
dink."
broke. Everybody's seen my dink and I'm broke. That's what
Yeah.
I think is what he's
Maybe
real
it never
issue
grew.
is, yeah.
Maybe that was
Yeah.
the biggest issue. He's like,
Yeah.
no, everybody still knows what it looks like.
Got baby
That's
dink.
basically pornography, because that's what my thing looks like now. That could be.
So before we close, unless you want to close, I
Oh,
got
no, whatever you got, dude.
got a current event here that's very, very interesting. Are you familiar with Purdue Pharmaceuticals?
Slightly. Like, I know they exist.
They were the guys that put OxyContin on the market.
Okay, yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
and,
yeah. I remember one of their CEOs that was in some shit a while back. Like,
Oh,
they
yeah.
held them accountable for that.
Well, one of their CEOs was part of I think it's the Sackler family, and and he actually went on record as saying it wasn't addictive, and it's actually 1.5 times more powerful than morphine and extremely addicted. And they marketed it to America without any prerequisites. As a matter of fact, the Sackler or Purdue Pharmaceuticals got found guilty of legitimately paying doctors to give prescriptions for the highest level of OxyContin that they can, and they addicted a nation.
Yeah,
It
they're
is-
scared giving them kickbacks and
Yeah.
prizes and shit.
yeah,
Like,
100%.
We're not paying you,
No,
you, but-
legitimate paying. They got found guilty of paying doctors to
did
do
they?
it, and
Well, because I thought that's what they were doing the whole time. They were just hiding it by being like, "No, it's a gift. It's a whatever."
Okay, well,
But anyways,
my
yeah,
understanding
you're
is
right.
that they were actually also paying these guys. So there was a an article called "Shame of the Sacklers," and I forget where it was published, but "Shame of the Sacklers." A federal judge is expected to certify Purdue's Pharmaceuticals bankruptcy plan of $4.5 billion payouts for the 500,000 opioid deaths that they caused in America. So there's a huge class action lawsuit against them. The whole Purdue Pharmaceuticals went bankrupt. But the problem is the Sackler family itself, who runs it, because this is a corporation, the corporation gets sued and goes bankrupt.
Baby.
The Sackler families are still billionaires. They still have 4.2 billion of their own. Yeah, sure, the company had to pay 4.5 billion, and they're bankrupt. But the Sackler family is still billionaires.
Yeah.
And to do whatever they want, even though there's like identifiable proof and links of, hey, this guy ran it. These guys profited from it. These are the $1 billion payouts that they got from the opioid crisis. They intentionally, this is a drug cartel. That was on the right side of legislation, and they played the right loophole games with that system we were talking about earlier in order to basically do the same thing as Mexican cartels or any other heroin trafficker. And they did it directly. They marketed it directly to the doctors. And then the doctors prescribed it as a pain medication and actually started making profits from prescribing it as a recreational thing.
Everybody feels good and everybody feels good, right?
Yeah. Oxys, their sales dropped 80% when they were forced to redesign their drugs so it couldn't be crushed and injected. Which tells you...
Because, just people just... no, I'm just taking the... No, you're doing it as mainlining fucking hardcore.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
So it's very interesting when you can have a legal system or a political system that allows you to set up a corporation to do profoundly unethical and basically wrong, immoral things. And when that corporation collapses or is found guilty, then that's all that has to happen. The corporation pays, the corporation is absolved, but the people that run the corporation have legal immunity. These people aren't being prosecuted. They aren't being sued. They aren't being bankrupted. They aren't being forced to pay for the 500,000 deaths that their drug specifically caused. They're allowed to walk away scot-free and are still considered pillars of the community because they donate to universities, they donate to science innovation, they donate to hospitals. This is the Sackler wing of our hospital. They're great philanthropists. They're drug dealers. They refined an opioid that is highly, highly addicted, give kickbacks to doctors to prescribe it to people in need that are vulnerable, who become addicted, who die, and they get off scot-free. And they're pillars of a community. So when we were talking about these systems, these corrupt systems earlier, and guess what? They will take that money and they will lobby people and politicians that'll keep the system legal. So how do we ever get out of that system when we were talking about, the Freemen, they were fighting against the laws that were in place, right? Well, yeah, because the laws are meant to keep this system operating. And as long as that system is operating, how the fuck can you ever win? Other than boycotting these they told me I needed meds for my brain. I said, fuck it. I'll meditate, go sober, and just drink lots of water, exercise.
Yeah.
And that's the best I can do to not support the pharmaceutical system as much as I can.
Yeah. Well, and it's tough with that because it's obviously it's being manipulated. You know what I mean? It's not even like, the system will kind of look after me. It's like, nah, they're purposely fucking with you. This is against you at this point.
Yeah, well, and sugar, fat, salt, animal products, the what's it called? Oil. The fossil fuels. All of these systems are huge lobbyists. I know there's limitations in Canada on individual lobbying, but there's all kinds of sideways ways that you can, Stephen Harper is now on a board of some sort of fossil fuel organization, Sure,
Brad Wall did the same thing. He went to go be a lawyer for a lobbying group that works for fossil fuels in Calgary.
So they won't give you a direct bribe, but what they'll do is they'll offer you a job as soon as you're out of politics and just kind of keep us in play, right?
Yep.
So, hey, how can a person win under an oppressive system while still obeying the rules of the oppressive system when it's meant to oppress you and keep you in place? It's meant to keep you domesticated, declawed, numb, void, and entertained.
I like to just go loose and just try to bounce off the rocks. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
Just let it flop around you.
Well, I
Start
guess it
swimming
is
when
what
you
it is.
can.
Well, I like the idea
Yeah,
of parallel
no, it fucking
organizations.
sucks. Exactly. Right? Yes.
Yeah.
Put your energy into the things that you can and give a fuck about.
Yep. Yeah. Parallel
And
organizations.
eventually that'll be your world, right? That'll be everything else will still be kind of fucked probably, and you still can't fix it. But the shit around you will be like this basement.
Yep.
Fine tuned.
Yeah.
Fucking
reflection of what you
curated.
would ideal. Yeah. Well, and whether it's like the Bastards or DSR or anything else, those are all parallel organizations of people that share a common value system, right?
Exactly.
And
That's where I go to be feminine. Is with
well,
the
or
Bastards.
whatever, or just to be yourself.
Yeah.
To be comfortable in being yourself when you couldn't do that at the library or church or fucking city hall meeting or the mall, maybe, you know.
Slow pitch.
Yeah, can't do it, you know. There's another side of me, we're going long here. There's another side of me that says maybe subcultures are important for people that don't fit in because there's enough people that are part of the mainstream system that believe in that and are supporting it. And those people that are able and willing to move out of those systems should have the right to go and live in underground communities. But that's maybe another story for another day.
I like it.
Yeah.
Chuds, mole people. I'm into it.
Yes, that was Humongous from Mad Max.
All right.
All right, love you guys.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.